Hello everyone, this is Q of the MJCast. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 82, our June 25th anniversary discussion. Today we're joined, of course, by co-host Jamon Bull, and we also have two guests on the show, Damien returning to the show, and our good friend TJ, who is making his debut on the show today. So thank you everyone for joining us for episode 82.
The following is a presentation from the MJCast, the internet's premier podcast on all things Michael Jackson.
You're listening to the MJCast by MJ fans for MJ fans.
The idea is to innovate, or else why am I doing it?
When I create my music, I feel like an instrument of nature.
You let it create itself, really. I know I do. And I love to entertain. That's one of my favorite things. I love my fans. Just simply Michael Jackson.
Welcome to the MJCast, your source of news and discussion on the King of Pop.
Intro music.
TJ, you should do that little intro music.
The following is a presentation. That one?
Yeah, that one.
The following is a presentation from the MJCast. Your premiere... I forgot the rest. Your premiere podcast... Yeah, you got it.
You know where I got that from?
Where from?
I ripped it from a Star Wars podcast, the Force.net's official Star Wars podcast. They used to do that. The following is a presentation from... Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, hey Jamon, how you going?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you? How are you, Q?
Very well, thank you very much. I think I'll let you introduce Damien, and then we've got someone who's making his debut on today's show.
Yes, very exciting. Well, we are here with Mr. Damien Shields, author on Michael Jackson. He wrote Xscape Origins, Skyping in from the Gold Coast, I believe, Damien.
I am. How you going?
Yeah, I'm good. What's been going on?
That's good.
You got back from Sydney yesterday, right? You've been traveling.
I went down to Sydney to see the Book of Mormon musical, which was extremely funny. Went down with my partner, which was a lot of fun. We spent 2 days down there. I've got a couple of friends that live down there as well, who are also MJ fans as well. And, but yeah, other than that, just been working around the clock, really. Working by day on my MJ research projects and working by night to pay the bills. So
He's 24/7 man.
Working day and night.
All right, and we would finally like to welcome, we're 4 seasons in, and finally we're very, very happy to have our very good mate, one of the Awesome Foursome, the original MJ gang, TJ. How are you, TJ? Thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome foreskin. Don't say that. Yeah. Okay, hi. Yeah, 4 years it took, but hi. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so excited.
I know. So some people may know you from your YouTube channel in the past. You had I've appeared with you on a sort of online podcast thing. Remember the Xscape?
Yeah, right. You've got a really good memory.
Wow.
That was about 12 years ago.
My lordy, how time flies. But we
Yeah.
caught up recently and we did something similar and it was exactly just like old times.
Yeah, it really was, wasn't it?
It really
We made a little
was.
happy birthday message for LaToya Jackson.
Yes, she didn't retweet it, but hopefully she may have seen it or felt the love regardless.
She did make a little video. Did you see? She did a little Instagram video.
I did see that.
Sort of to everybody that wished her a happy birthday.
Yeah.
But
So-
as far as I was concerned, she was talking to us.
Me too.
She probably was just talking to you guys.
So thank you for joining us. And I think maybe everyone sort of has listened to the show or knows Damien Shields. But we've not had TJ on before. So before we get to introducing TJ, we would like to hear a little bit about your fan story. Jamon, did you have some follow-up that you need to do?
Yeah. I wanted to know if you guys had heard the recent Vindication Day episode we dropped with Aphrodite Jones.
Yes.
Yes.
I loved it. I could have listened to that for another 4 or 5 hours.
Well, it was shorter than we had hoped for. So I wouldn't say I'd go for that long, but we did have about a third more questions that we did not get to cover in that that sitting. So
yeah, the most important question being the one about her reflections on the Geordie Chandler scenario, which she gave.
What was that? You mentioned that at the end of the show, and I don't know what you mean.
So I think she went on King Jordan Radio a couple of years ago, and she absolutely did say on that episode that she felt there was some suspicion around the Geordie Chandler relationship with Michael Jackson. There was some questions unanswered. She insinuated there was more to the story than what we knew, and I believe even insinuated Michael's guilt. So
not in sexual abuse. I don't think that's what she implied, and I think she was. I thought maybe I'm not remembering correctly or heard another clip, but it was not that she implied he was guilty of sexual assault or abuse in that case.
But that's how many fans took it. Like even if she didn't directly say that, like a lot of people came away from listening to that thinking, wow, she just said Michael was guilty. So we wanted to give her an opportunity to clarify. And unfortunately, we couldn't get to that. She had to go. So we might hold on to that conversation for another time.
Oh, is she coming back?
We thought about it. Maybe next year. Who knows?
Oh, cool. Well, I'd love to hear more from her.
If you had have known how much she would talk in the beginning, how much you would have been able to squeeze in at the end that you wanted to get.
Yeah, that's the thing. We often have like a lot of questions we want to get through, and when our guests don't tell us at the start of the conversation if they're on a time limit, we don't know what to do.
I think she's just a very good answer. Like, she gave great answers, extensive, and talked. And if you didn't stop her, I don't think she ever would have stopped talking, which is great from an interview perspective. But like you said, like if you have a list and it's 15 questions and you can only fit 10 of them in, I mean, sometimes you keep the most important questions till last. I understand that from conducting interviews myself, and when someone has to go, you sometimes just really miss out on the most important thing. Like the whole purpose of the call could have been for something, and you've missed it because she kept talking.
We got the advice once to start with all the important questions and do all of the MJ questions first, and then come back to the guest's earlier life at the end and flip it in post. We've had that advice before, but I've never tried it. It seems a bit unnatural to have a conversation that way, but it's worth considering.
It's worth considering, but I think we'd get very different answers if we started with harder hitting things compared to them warming up and sharing comfortable things about their history and more lighter topics and stories that they're excited to share before we really get the scalpel in and dig deep.
And sometimes you need the natural segue. Like, you can't just start with a question that you've given no context. And like you said, when with the scalpel kind of thing, it's like you also have to build that rapport with the person and have them trust you and understand that, you know, this question that may, if you came out of the gate with it, it may seem like, you know, what's the motive behind asking that question?
Yeah,
if you've really built the foundation and let them understand, you know, where you're coming from with the question, it's very helpful.
Or you could be nice and approach them very gently and they still treat you like an asshole. Brian Loren.
Oh, yeah. I've had two interviews like that. One of them made it to air, as you would know. The second one was from season 1, and the person was quite rude to me, but I stupidly edited out all of the rudeness, against Q's advice, actually. But
how did Charlie feel about that?
I don't think Charlie ever found out about that. Thanks, Damien.
Editing it out.
Great. Now I'm going to get a phone call. No, I won't. Charlie's nice. But yeah, I edited this guy to make him sound better. He was really rude. I edited out the rude bits, and now I'm thinking, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to present the conversation exactly as it is.
Trust in Q. Trust in Q. You're going to get that on a tattoo, okay? Trust in Q.
I think for the purpose of the way the MJCast is, that's the best way to do it. If you ever decided to go through all your archival interviews and like piece together some kind of documentary, you could easily be selective with what you use. But when it is a sit-down interview, one-on-one, or two people interviewing a special guest together, it's like it has to be presented the way it is, really, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm glad you guys enjoyed that. And yes, we do think there's a very good chance because Miss Jones was very keen to speak with us again, so we should be able to cover everything that we didn't get to cover in the first time we spoke with her in the future. So good to know.
I look forward to listening to that.
I look forward to listening back to it as well. I listen to the shows. Like, I'm sure there's people out there that create content and then don't maybe enjoy it themselves. But as soon as one of our episode drops, I push it to the front of the queue. It's always like play next in my podcast queue because I'm looking forward to hearing it as well. I'm the fan, just like people listening. So
Q's Q.
Who's your favourite
Q's
person
Q.
on the MJCast queue? Is it yourself or Jamon?
It's Jamon.
Oh, thanks. Oh, boy.
It is Jamon. All right. So also in today's episode, we are here for a reason. It's to not only hang out and have share some memories and good times because we're mates, but it is also to remember Michael on his anniversary of his passing today. So throughout the show, we're going to try and maybe leave a few little natural dips in conversation where we can edit in some of the clips from previous episode special guests where we've asked them the question, how Michael should be remembered. And then we'll also try and find some really nice musical tributes that we can play throughout this episode as well.
Sounds good. And just a reminder for listeners around the purpose of this episode as well. We know it's a difficult day around the world for Michael Jackson fans as we remember back to what happened on June 25th, 2009. It's inevitable that we do remember because it's on the news and, all kinds of things. But the purpose of these shows is to bring you a little bit of company on an otherwise difficult day.
Absolutely. Speaking of
Amen.
company, amen. Speaking of company, TJ.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. What Jamon just said, I think, is very important and why I'm really glad to be here today, because Michael did give us this wonderful gift of friendship, and on a day like today, which can be very, very sad, I think, we're very lucky and fortunate enough to know each other, but there are fans around the world, as you guys mentioned a lot, that don't have that, and a lot of people I know do tune into this show for that companionship. So I'm really glad to be here today.
Which we are very grateful for, not only you joining us, but for people listening to have some company. We're so grateful when we hear that, and sort of mission accomplished in a way. This little Awesome Foursome sort of was the seeds for the MJCast, which we'll get to a bit later. So, TJ, could you tell us your fan story?
Sure. Okay. Well, what can I tell you? I'm an Australian guy who's a lifelong Michael Jackson fan. I think I was 9. It was, 1994. And I've never been the outdoorsy type, even when I was a kid. So every few months in Australia, we used to get a couple of weeks off school. I don't know if the rest of the world has that, but we'd have these little breaks for a couple of weeks from school. And because I wasn't the outdoorsy playing type, my mum would take me to like Blockbuster Video and rent like 10 videos. We're talking videos back then, video cassette tapes. And one of them was Moonwalker. And I can still remember watching that for the first time as a 9-year-old kid and completely falling under the spell of Michael's magic. And I had that video, they had one copy of that, and I basically had that out on permanent rental. Every time it was due to be returned, I would just wait for them to process the return and then I'd take it back out again. I must have seen that movie 500 times. Our local library, I found somewhere only a few months after discovering Moonwalker, the documentary The Legend Continues, which sort of gave I'm sure you guys have seen that, right?
Yeah, James Earl Jones, amazing voiceover.
I think it's the greatest documentary ever made of Michael. Falling in love with Michael through Moonwalker and then having that documentary, which sort of gives a little bit more of the backstory of his career and the Jacksons and everything like that. I was obsessed as a kid. And I remember at one point my grandmother saying to me, "You'll grow out of it." So I'm still waiting for that to happen.
I think we're all waiting for that to happen after being told that by parents and people.
Teachers, everyone.
Yep.
And a friend of mine from school, so you got to remember it's 94. So all the kids in school during the Jordan Chandler accusations or just after, but that was obviously the talk of the schoolyard. And so it wasn't really cool at that point, even then, to be a Michael Jackson fan in school in Australia. But there was this one kid that I was in school with. We were like best friends, and he had the Bucharest 92 concert on video on VHS. We would hang out all weekend, every weekend, and basically just watch that over and over and over again until we wore the tape out.
Awesome.
But it was in long play, which was, I don't really even understand what it was, but basically it wouldn't play in my VCR, so we had to hang out at his house all the time, and I really wanted to borrow it and take it home, but it wouldn't work in mine, so I basically lived at his house on weekends just to watch Michael.
I know what long play is because I got caught with that function a few times for school projects. So long play was a function on some VHS recorders where you could choose standard or slow, I think it was SP or LP, to record shows in, and it would essentially fit twice as much on the VHS cassette because of the way that it recorded on. But if the player you recorded on in long play, then you took the cassette out and went to like your house where it didn't have that function, it would not play. So I remember once in year 9 or something, I had sort of somehow got clips of video, or it probably was separate video cassettes where I'd time coded things and queued them up ready to play, and I would be doing like an oral school project, and I'd be then inserting a VHS tape, pressing play to play, say, like, you know, the clip from the Dangerous short films where it's Michael speaking about the children of the world, and it's got all those images of the kids' faces going past or whatever. And maybe that had been recorded off an award show or something in long play. And then when I went to hit play in my project, it would go in fast forward, like, because it would play at the normal speed. So it would go the wrong speed, and it would be like a chipmunk talking, and it was always very embarrassing and an early indication of my technology skills.
Kids these days will never know the struggle.
They will never know the struggle. Cool. Yeah, that concert was pretty much a watershed moment for that era and fans of that era for sure.
Yeah, and it wasn't like we had YouTube or anything. You know, what you had on videotape was what existed for you, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically I never grew out of it. That's the point of my story. I fell under the spell of Michael's magic, and I never left it. It never left, you know. I think you guys probably have said this before. A lot of fans say it, but I've always said and felt that Michael was my superhero.
I love that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I love when we talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Moonwalker probably being the first impression as well. I mean, he is magic in that movie, but it's not just that movie that he's magic. Everything about him was magical. And, you know, I loved Batman and Superman and all that as a kid, but they just didn't have that thing. That thing, I don't have a word for it, but you guys know exactly what I'm talking about.
That
it was
thing.
Magic. I feel like in the video for Can You Feel It, how the Jacksons are giant guys and they're sprinkling the gold dust over that's what I felt like happened to me. I felt like I was sprinkled with magic dust or something. And I still feel that way. I still am moved by Michael, and I can watch a concert that I've seen 1,000 times and I can still just go, wow. You know, wow.
I think that's what it is about Michael, is like, you use the word magic, and obviously magic is like kind of inexplicable and the secret, like there's something mysterious about it and we don't quite understand it. We can't quite define what it is or what's happening. And when people ask me why I like Michael so much, you know, I could go through a list and give them all of the different skills and talents that he has and all of the cool stuff he's done. But the easiest way to explain it is to say magic, or to say that the reason he's so great is because I can't explain why he's so great. Like, it's inexplicable. It's just beyond words. So I feel what you're saying.
Nice. Because there is a music now. I think the playing field of music now, like you look out at all the talent that's available for consumption now, and it's infinitely huger. It just the roster of talent and music and artists that we hear on the radio or on YouTube is just like infinite now compared to back in the 80s and 90s, where the playing field was so much, it seemed a lot smaller. And people like, Beyonce and Kanye and Jay-Z and, European artists, there's huge successful artists out there. But for me, none of them have that magic, for lack of a better word, that Michael had.
Yeah, I think if someone exploded through the floor of a stage and stood there for 3 minutes, it would just look stupid. The crowd would stop cheering. They really would. There would be no atmosphere. It wouldn't maintain it for that amount of time.
I love that you mentioned that. That is absolutely, and not just because it's Michael, that entrance to a stage is the most incredible thing. Not only the bursting out of the stage, which is just incredible on its own, but then to just stand there like a statue for all that time, and people are losing their shit.
Yeah. Yeah. No one else. No one else.
Amazing. Imagine Ed Sheeran doing that. Everyone would be like, all right, pick your guitar up.
Bang, there he is. Awkward.
I've seen Ed Sheeran. He's very good, but he actually does start playing his guitar before he even gets on the stage.
Oh, right.
That's a nice touch. Touch. Yeah, I think it's very different what Michael had compared to others.
You know what I would love to see documentary footage of? Michael Jackson learning how to use the toaster. Like just being shown it for the first time. Okay, this is what you've got to do. You're gonna be thrown up into the air. Like, you know how like the dancers and This Is It were being taught by Kenny Ortega? I'd love to see Michael using the toaster for the first time.
There is a little bit of footage somewhere on YouTube, the behind the scenes making of the history tour. Michael's wearing the surgical mask and you can see him under the stage with Kenny poking around in the toaster in a red shirt, I think.
Yeah, but he's only going at elevator speed. He's not going at toaster speed.
Nice. TJ, can I ask you a little bit about your tastes in Michael music? Like, where did you come in musically? Like, you were a Moonwalker kid, so was the Bad album your jam? Is it still your jam? Or where has your musical Michael tastes progressed and taken you?
Well, even though Moonwalker was where I discovered Michael, it was during the Dangerous album, and I remember my first sort of Michael album release memory is when History came out. I had the first pressing of the album before it was censored.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember that. I remember the cardboard cutouts of the statue in the stores and all that sort of thing. Musically, it's one of those things, isn't it? You can't, there's not really one point in time that I can say that's my favorite, because really it's so different and it really depends on your mood. Like the Off the Wall album is pure joy, absolute joy to listen to. That's the only word I can really think to describe it. I absolutely love that. And the Bad album, I like the Bad album, even though it is very much sounds like its time. You know, it sounds like it came from that exact moment in time. But that doesn't mean that it's not absolutely fantastic. I love that album. But at the moment, I think probably History is where I go the most now, because it really is, I feel like that's really Michael speaking, you know? He's really saying something. Invincible, I feel, is a sort of a lost opportunity, especially considering a lot of the material we know, came from that time. The album that was actually released, I think, is it's a little bit of a letdown. Obviously, there's some really great stuff on there, but it doesn't give me that same level of engagement that I get from the earlier albums.
Thank you so much. If you have any other stories that you remember later that you want to share, then just, let us know.
I do have one other story, actually.
Oh, excellent.
This is probably it's a bit sad because, I'm a fan that never met or even saw Michael with my own two eyes. But the closest I ever got to him, and a memory that is such a pleasant thing, was I was about 18 or 17, and on eBay, somebody in my town was selling a signed Michael Jackson fedora. Wow. And it was, up to $2,000 or $3,000, and I certainly couldn't afford it. But I messaged him anyway. I was like, I can't afford to buy this, but I'm such a fan. Can I please see the hat? And he invited me. Absolutely, come and see it. So I called a fan friend of mine who lived like 2 hours away, but I drove all the way to pick her up, and we went to this house and met this lovely man who had the hat, and he had like a certificate of authenticity and all that stuff, and it was signed. And the thing that I learned, I don't know if it's even common knowledge among the fans or not, but Michael's fedoras were his own brand. That there's actually the brand printed inside the hat is Michael Jackson. And so I got like photos with it, and I know it sounds silly, but that touching and engaging with that hat and putting it on my head, I felt like I was with Michael that day.
Wow.
That is awesome. And I think that is testament to Michael's magic again. Like these objects, a hat, a glove, something that simple. I don't know if I'm using the term right, but like, is it like a Horcrux in Harry Potter?
Like an artifact or a relic.
It's like a talisman. These are
You're using a lot of words that I don't know what they mean, but I'll agree with
you. Probably the wrong words. Charlie will know. We should have had Charlie in the background going, "No, Q, that's the wrong word." But maybe I'm being correct. But they're like these objects of just insignificance, really. But his magic has infused them with power that no one else could.
Yeah, as you say, it's sort of like, especially to Michael, would have been insignificant, because think of how many of those hats passed through his hands over all the tours. How many he threw out into the crowd. He probably gave them away to people all the time.
Yeah.
Karen Faye says that he would get them in by the box load. So there's probably thousands and thousands of these hats. But just the fact that I got to engage with one that I know he handled because he signed it.
Yeah.
Was very, very special. And it was a long time ago, and it's still a very warm memory.
I love that. That's a brilliant story.
You will be missed by your fans. I clench my fist, 'cause it's so hard to withstand. If I had the power to change one thing, it'll bring you back today. But life's not promised, and that won't change. I'ma meet you there someday. In this lifetime, I wanna thank you for showing me the man in the mirror. In this lifetime, I wanna thank you. You motivated the world to deliver. We cry out of joy. 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 There's so much joy in our heart. Oh, I wish the world could see you the way I did. And I wish they witnessed how a wonderful dad you were to all your kids. And I noticed it didn't stop there. Saving children was one of your goals. Just donating all of your millions so they could one day rule the world. In this lifetime, I wanna thank you for showing me the man in the mirror. In this lifetime, I wanna thank you. You motivated the world to deliver. We cry out of joy. 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 There's so much joy in our heart. One word for the media. Please help the people see the love. Stop this garbage you're feeding us. Show him for who he really was. Remember there was more to come. Remember he's the chosen one. Remember him for wars he's won. Remember him for what he's done. 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 Remember him for what in this lifetime, I wanna thank you for showing me the man in the mirror. In this lifetime, I wanna thank you. You motivated the world to deliver. We cry out of joy. 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 There's so much joy in our heart.
Rest in peace and harmony, Michael. Love you, man.
One question we ask every single guest on the show is always, how should Michael be remembered?
Well, Michael should be remembered by the love that he had in his heart for anything. He cared about people. He cared about love. He cared about children. He just cared. He was a very caring person. The music he shared to us and wrote for us, it was some music that carried great messages, and some of the lyrics just have good boundary and all these other elements to it. He was the type of person that everyone would want to be a part of their life. I think some people don't understand that Michael was a different type of person. He didn't have all the type of things that a normal person would have in his life. Matter of fact, I don't think he's ever been out in the public without being bothered or hassled, or can just hang out like a normal person. That in yourself is very difficult and different to live with. But he was a very happy person as well. So he loved the music business, but he loved people even more. So I think that's how he should be remembered.
And our final question for you on Michael Jackson is a question we ask every special guest we have on the show. I'd like you to answer how you think Michael Jackson should be remembered.
I just think of him as one of the most talented souls that I ever met. And I've worked with a lot of people. Just rhythmically, his rhythm was perfect. His work ethic was insane. I mean, he worked hard. I mean, that's why he had Lavelle up in Vegas in 2008. He just, he said, it's time for me to start dancing again. And Lavelle said Michael was wearing him out. They would, dance for 4 hours at a time and, sweats running down and all that stuff. And, I remember him taking tap lessons up at the ranch just because he wanted to learn, other disciplines. I remember him telling me how much he admired Fred Astaire and hoped that he'd be still dancing when he was 80 years old, And I remember the speech he gave when we were getting ready to start This Is It. This was a speech just to me, but he goes, I can spend the rest of my life just doing my biggest hits. He goes, I don't want to do that. He goes, I want to keep writing great songs that are relevant, that, people will love, and, keep reinventing, who I am. So he didn't want to just sit on his haunches and just do Michael Jackson's greatest hits. And I think that's one of the reasons he didn't do the Vegas thing, because the whole time we were there, he kept telling me he kept getting offer after offer after offer from different casinos, to build him anything he wanted to perform in and just get him to stay in Vegas for the rest of his life, and he just wasn't ready to do that yet.
Wow. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Hi, this is Diana Walzak, sculptor of the Michael Jackson History Statue, and you're listening to the MJCast.
Jamon,
Yes.
who should we get? I'm thinking maybe Damien for this. Who should we get to sort of speak about how we all know each other? How are we all friends? Would it be you or Damien that might have...
Well, I've got a bit of a refreshed memory because TJ and I were talking about this only maybe a day or two ago. But
Damien, how are we all friends? Because it's quite a long story. You know, it's many years ago and many different forums on the internet and interaction. So what are your earliest recollections of how we became MJ mates?
Well, we're the perfect four people to have to kind of tell this story and fill the gaps for each other, because I think the four of us specifically are so intertwined in this story. It's like it's perfect. So it's really nice to share this day with you guys because it's the first time we've really ever done it. So, excellent. But as far as my memory goes, way back in probably around 2002, I was a member of a couple of online fan forums, so I'm fairly sure it was MJJF.
Yes, it was.
I remember I was a member of MJJF, and I was also a member of MJ News Online. But anyway, whichever one it was, the first ever fan that I ever interacted with outside of having met people in person and just discovering that they were fans was TJ. And I remember just kind of, obviously we're connecting over our common interest in Michael, and that's why we're on the fan forum, and discovering that there's somebody else in this country, this huge country of 26 million people. It's like, oh wow, isn't that amazing that there's two of us in this one country together that like the same thing. It's crazy to think about, really, but that's the way it felt because, being a young teenager who had only previously had access to his VHS tapes and his CDs, and there was no way to really make any kind of intimate contact with someone who shared the same love for the thing. It was really quite interesting, and we were on opposite ends of the country, but we bonded like instantly. I do wonder if TJ, if you weren't Australian, whether we would have even bothered to see if there was a friendship there. And it wasn't even the fact that we were close or we could hang out. Like we couldn't. We were young. We didn't have a driver's license. We weren't adults. We couldn't go and visit each other even if we wanted to. But I don't know, there's just something about the fact that you were Australian and I was Australian, and it was like a kinship, like instant mateship. And we talked on the forums, and then back then it was MSN Messenger and just chatting, and exactly the same way we still do all these years later, just talking shop on Michael. How we haven't run out of things to talk about, I have no idea. But very soon after meeting online TJ, I'm fairly sure it was almost like immediately after, I came across Q as well. And you were Q Perth back then on the forums.
Yeah, yep.
So
before that, I was Maestro on earlier forums, I think. But
okay.
Yeah, around that time, it was Q Perth.
Yeah, Q Perth is the way I discovered you. And then again, shortly after that, Jamon. So Jamon was...
something Crane.
Yes! Summer Crane.
Yeah.
Summer Crane.
Yes, that's... Yeah, good memory there.
Postcards from far away.
There we go.
My old website.
That's crazy. So it was all pretty, like, the dominoes kind of started to fall pretty quickly once I'd met TJ. I think then we all just fell into each other's lives, and the relationships eventually became real life relationships. I mean, we've spent quite a lot of time together over the years. We've shared some really important moments, like specifically landmark moments, like big landmark moments.
Oh boy, so many of them.
Mostly like sad ones, really. I remember like Jamon, in as far as the story of the day that Michael died, Jamon was like the cornerstone of that. And
let's go back even a little bit further, because we shared some milestone moments when Michael was alive as well. Like
we did.
I remember actually talking to you, Damien. There was a moment about 2 months before Michael passed away where he was gearing up for This Is It, where I reached out to you and I was actually really worried. I remember saying to you, I don't know what I would do if Michael passed away. And I was so terrified that he was going to die, like in the process of doing This Is It. And I was like, I just don't know how I would be able to be a happy person if he was to pass away, not being able to come back after what happened. And you said, that's not going to happen. He's got too many people around him looking after him. He's not going to pass away. Don't worry. I remember that was a crazy conversation. And then even before that, we had many moments connected to Michael, like MJ50. How good was that? That was an amazing moment.
All three of you were together at MJ50, if I'm
That was the first
correctly.
time I met Jamon, was MJ50.
Was it the first time we'd all hung out together?
I think so.
Well,
I think
I
it
wasn't
was,
at,
yeah,
I
yeah.
wasn't
it
at
wasn't the first
MJ50.
time I hung out with Q and TJ together at the at
Club
the
Michael
event that
Jackson
never
thing.
was.
Yeah.
Because
It
some
was
of
never
us,
about the
yeah,
money. It was never about the money, TJ.
That's
You
right.
got-
I
Walk
Walk me
travelled
through
over
this
to-
story of this MJ Club business, because I don't understand it.
There was a club forum online called Club MJ, and it was a really, really great little forum.
Yeah.
It was the
And
best forum I've ever
It
visited,
was
as far as I'm
great.
concerned.
What was so good about it, Damien?
I just think it was simple, well designed, and it wasn't exclusively Australian, but again, it was heavily Australian membership for some reason. The lady that created it was Australian, so that's probably why her network was probably, the founding supporters of the thing. So, but it was just a great little place. It seemed to have, in the beginning, a family atmosphere that excluded a lot of the pettiness and infighting that every other Michael Jackson fan site had. And that's why I always say, like, I don't like to call the Michael Jackson fans moonwalkers. I prefer to call them MJ fan, because it is like a family, because families argue, families bicker, families don't talk to each other and then do talk to each other, and that's exactly what it feels like. It's a family for sure.
Yeah, and Michael was the moonwalker, not us.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I don't know, it just didn't have all of that in the beginning, and it was just kind of, if you went on there and said that you preferred one beat-it jacket to the other, that you weren't going to have somebody else coming on there and telling you you're an absolute moron, because how could you possibly prefer Dangerous to a beat-it jacket from, the bad
It
to a
sounds
beat-it
silly,
jacket?
but that's what the fan community was like
Yeah.
most of the
Still
time,
is.
except for that
Still
part.
like
Yeah,
that.
right.
Except now the arguments happen over significant things, not so much whether Michael wore a wig or not.
So I remember there was a lot of excitement because there was an event getting planned, and people were coming from, and people did come from New Zealand, and I came from Perth to Sydney for what was going to be like a little MJ party convention kind of thing. But
Yeah, a meet-up for the forum members.
yeah, a big meetup for the forum members. It never happened.
No, it didn't.
Ended spectacularly.
I
And,
could probably tell the story of that, because I was...
in a nutshell, you can share that story, and people can be aware that these things do happen.
Okay, so basically, the lady that founded the website initiated, like you said, this fan gathering. It's going to be like you said, a convention. The idea was that there would be a venue in the heart of Sydney, hired, and
God.
it would be able to facilitate performances and like exhibition kind of set up, food and all kind of stuff. And it was supposed to benefit, I believe, the Red Cross. And it sounded amazing. And like, I was very young at the time. It was 2006, I believe this was happening. And so I was about 2007.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was 18 or 19 at the time. The lady who was organizing it had not booked, but arranged for me to be one of the performers, along with another guy called Paul Rizzo, who's a very nice guy. living in Melbourne, and Michael Jackson tribute artist.
Yeah, legendary Australian tribute artist.
He's very
Great guy.
well known for his craft. He's very good at what he does, and he's a very nice guy. At the base of it all, he's just a nice guy. And so he'd been, booked to perform, and I was booked to perform, and I was friends with all of you guys, and we were all going to go. It was like, a great way that we could just come together and celebrate. And I started asking some questions because I was trying to plan my performance, and I was just kind of trying to get a gauge of, how big's the stage going to be, and, what's the facility, and what can I do, what can't I do. And I was really planning on investing quite a bit of money into making my performance really good. I'd had the intention to get, at the time, there were some websites that were manufacturing, based on Michael's original patent, the lean boots. So I wanted to kind of use those, or, maybe do something really special. And I wasn't getting any answers as far as the venue went. Not only was I not getting any answers, I wasn't getting a response at all from the lady who was organizing it. So me, with my investigative nature, decided I was going to get to the bottom of this and just go over her head. And I went straight to the venue that she said she'd booked.
Oh, that's right.
So it's obviously in my nature to investigate. I recall specifically calling the venue and asking them to confirm whether or not they had a booking for this particular person and this particular event on this particular date, which we'd all purchased tickets. People were paying money to buy tickets to this event, and no one had any answers at this point. It was getting closer and closer, and
booking flights and booking hotels.
I booked flights. I ended up in Sydney.
Yep.
And the venue said they'd never heard of her. And then I got really concerned, and then I called the Red Cross, who she was saying that the money was going to be, the proceeds of the event was going to benefit the Red Cross, and they said they'd never heard of her either. And it was at the point of no return by this stage. The flights were non-refundable. The hotel, TJ and I had arranged to stay in a hotel together. There was a lot of stuff that needed to go into planning this. We were young. We weren't just we are now, where if something goes wrong and have the composure and the maturity to make alternate plans. It was a big deal for us then. And it's like Q said, it spectacularly combusted. And
So what happened to this lady? What's the deal? What was her name? What happened?
No. Can we say her name?
Yeah, why not? She stole people's money.
I don't know.
I forgot her last name, but her first name was...
I think it was all refunded.
Okay.
And I think personally, this is my impression of the whole thing looking back now as, an adult. I think she intended to do something really beautiful and nice for the fans, but I just don't think... I think she bit off more than she could chew.
I think she was a compulsive liar.
Yeah, that as well, but I do think it came from a good place in her heart. Compulsive liars can be nice people as well. Maybe I've got my rose-colored glasses on, because I know it didn't feel like that back then. But
you're right that we were young and naive, but she actually had sort of proven herself as somebody that we could trust, because when Michael was in Japan in 2006 and did that fan meetup where he wore that interesting outfit that looked like pajamas.
Q loves the gold lions, just saying.
She actually had when she first created the forum, Club Michael Jackson, she had people, each member was able to make a page for a book that she actually did put together and present to Michael. And there are photos online of her presenting it to Michael with the logo of the forum and everything, Club Michael Jackson. So you can see this online. So basically all the members of the forum wrote a letter to Michael and she handed it to him. So we actually did trust her because
I forgot about that. Wow.
Yeah, she proved, we had no reason to doubt her at that point.
So after this, what happened to Club MJ?
I don't know how it ended, but I left. I couldn't stand after that. Well, just ending on that party thing that never happened. One good thing that did come of it. It ended with a statement
on the website to say that it was the site was closed.
Yeah, but the good thing that came from that party that never happened was that we all actually did go to Sydney and got to hang out. And we sort of, even though the official party never happened, a bit, maybe 10 or 15 of the fans that had actually made it to Sydney all got together. I remember we all went bowling. And we did some touristy stuff around Sydney.
We went to Red Eye Records in Sydney and was looking for MJ stuff, and a few of us bought some things. That was pretty good fun.
So some good did come of it.
We did that like Beatles crossing the
we did
the sidewalk,
crossing the street.
The zebra crossing photo that we still have, which is just hilarious. I remember we were like dancing on the steps of the Opera House, and there was something else that we did that was really fun. I had it in my mind like 2 seconds ago. I'd forgotten. It was a beautiful trip. Oh, we met
a good day.
We met Q's hubby there for the first time, right? It wasn't hubby at the time, but
it was a good trip. It was a good time. Out of that, there was another club that sort of came about, Maximum Jackson.
I wasn't on that. I was so scared off forums after that Club Michael Jackson debacle that I just never went back to forums after that.
I was a member of Maximum Jackson. I wasn't a founder or a moderator or anything like that, but at one point they did make me their term was the news reporter, I think.
Yeah.
So it was my job to like bring news to the website.
And that you did.
Well, I worked really hard on it actually. I was obviously again just a kid, but built relationships with people like Kenny Ortega and different people at Sony, and like Randy Phillips from AEG. And I know all these names and companies sound a little bit, off-putting now, given what we know all these years later. But back then, this is like 2007, 2008. Randy Phillips, there was no reason to not want to be in touch with him because he was the one who was trying to get Michael back on stage, and he always promised me, always, like I guessed his email address. So I sent him an email, just purely like email like a receptionist at AEG, just to get the email format to see, letter dot surname at whatever it was dot whatever it was, and got the format, and then just applied his name to it. Sent him an email as if I knew him, as if I should have his email, and he replied to me, and I couldn't believe it. And he always promised me, he said, listen, Damien, like, I haven't got anything to tell you right now, but I'm working on it, and I promise that, the second that there is something to tell you, you'll be the first person I tell. And I was just a kid. I don't even know if he knew how old I actually was, or, what I was like as a person, but he, for some reason, was true to his word. And about a week before Michael went to London to announce that This Is Hit Show, he sent me an email. I said, look, there's going to be some big stuff happening. I told you you'd be the first person I told. I need you to be ready in the coming week. There's going to be some things I want you to rally the fans for. Very exciting times, and just basically stand by. And then, the day before Michael flew out to London, he said Michael will be on a plane to London tomorrow, and we want all the fans to be at the Indigo 2 or whatever it was called, where Michael gave the press conference to say he was going to do the tour. And we didn't know what it was going to be, but we knew that we needed to be paying attention. Turned out to be a tour. I was hoping it was going to be like one of those 360 deals where it was an album and a tour, but yeah, like those kind of things. So all of that kind of news was coming to Maximum Jackson through me, and eventually I lost that job a couple of years later when the Michael album came out and people formed their views and took certain stances, and there was a lot of pressure from the estate.
You were doing a phenomenal job at that time. Let's not understate it. Like in 2008, onwards, before Michael passed away, you were the man to get news from around Michael, and not just for the comeback tour. You were posting articles all the time on a weekly basis around all of these different collaborators Michael was working with in the studio. will.i.am, Akon, Red One, Stargate. If anyone wanted to know what Michael was up to in the studio, it was that thread that you were running on Maximum Jackson that they went. So
much fun.
It was awesome. You were an exciting guy to know at the time, man. It was it was like we had the inside story to everything speaking to you, and it's
I have a funny inside story that I've never shared actually. You know that performance that never happened, that perhaps was never actually going to happen, with the the All Good Entertainment, the thing that he was like the pay-per-view show that they were trying to get him to do.
Is that the one that Frank DeLeo was trying to get to happen and with the whole Jackson family? Yeah.
Yeah, huge scam. But I was in communication with Terry Harvey, who was working with Frank DeLeo on trying to scam that whole thing together. And I knew about the whole thing as it was unfolding behind the scenes, but never felt that it was legitimate enough to actually write publicly about. But the team from Maximum Jackson will remember I used to like stay up until 3 a.m. and had this little Nokia phone that I used to like make international phone calls that cost me like $100 per phone call for just like a 3-minute phone call, and I would record them on my on like a dictaphone and then transfer the dictaphone recording to the computer so I could share the recording of the phone call that I had with Terry Harvey with the team. And
that's how some people listen to our podcasts, I think.
Oh my goodness.
Charlie.
It was crazy times back then. Like there was a lot going on, and you know, it was very, very difficult to distinguish what was real from what was, you know, made up or what was.
Do you regret putting all of your eggs in the basket that was Maximum Jackson? Do you wish you'd started DamienShields.com a little bit earlier and got all this news out that way?
No, not at all. It's a matter of fact, I think the opposite. I wish that Maximum Jackson would have not taken the stance on me that they did when the Michael album, the Casio tracks came out. I would have preferred to have made that role as a reporter a little bit more serious and a little bit more kind of credible as the years rolled on and as I got older and continued working for Maximum Jackson. That website capitulated. It doesn't exist anymore. It's called History Continues now. I don't even know if anyone even visits it anymore. I never ever intended to do DamienShields.com, and I've abandoned that now as well. It's never was something I was super excited about, but it was something that I felt was necessary because I didn't have a platform once I got booted from Maximum Jackson. There was nowhere for me to share information, and I still had the connections that I had, and I was still building more, and I was obviously constantly studying and researching Michael, but there was no way to give that information to anybody. So, you know, I created the website and continued to write articles and whatever else, and it is what it is, and it lasted for a few years, and then I gave up on it because it was a lot of time investment to continue to create free content when I was, you know, becoming a fully fledged adult, and you know, I couldn't continue to do it anymore.
The content was dynamite though, man.
It was
a fantastic website.
Incredible content on that. But and also when it was on Max Jacks, but they really shot themselves in the face really when you got booted, because it was downhill from there, and it was a good club. It was a good place, and it was a great forum.
I loved it.
And yeah, they really shot themselves in the face when that happened. So why did you get booted?
Well, it was just all around the Casio tracks, which is a shame because all of the negativity that has existed in the last 8 years is pretty much stems from that. I was quite upset, and I didn't make my feelings secret at the time, and there was a lot of pressure from the Michael Jackson estate for fan sites at the time to comply with their orders for
toe the line.
Exactly. Don't discuss the Casio tracks, and if you are, don't discuss them negatively. And the MJ Online team at the time was trying to stick their nose into people's businesses, and basically they were trying to tell the owners of fan sites that they were ruining Michael's legacy by allowing negative discussions. And their whole bullshit pitch to fan site owners was, how do you think it looks when a new Michael Jackson fan who's trying to discover Michael Jackson lands on your website and the top 3 threads on your main news discussion are people talking about fake songs? And
it looks like you put fake songs out, you fucks.
Exactly, and that was what I said.
That's the pot calling the kettle black.
I said, this is not the responsibility of, like, the fans are not responsible for putting those fake songs out. That is Sony and the estate's fault. So it's your fault that that's at the top of our news discussion. You won't resolve it. It's not going anywhere. And at the time, I asked the MJ Online team, I said, does John Branca really think that this is just going to blow over? Like, is he that naive that he thinks that they can do this and that we will just move on? And they flat out said to me, yes. He thinks that, and that will happen. And they truly believed that we would just kind of forget about it. Like, it would be a thing and it was controversial, but then we'd move on. Well, now who's laughing?
Yeah.
You're still in court. You're still fighting this. I'm still researching it. There's more to come.
Not on our watch, buddy.
It's not going to happen. We're not going to let you off the hook like that. This is the person we dedicate our entire lives to. Think of those stories that TJ told earlier about Michael being his superhero at 9 years old. You don't just let that happen. No way. Get out of town.
Yeah. That's why we're all still here. Like, Michael gave us all so much. And, you know, sometimes I think about, you know, the podcast, the MJCast, and it was, for me, finally the opportunity for me to give back to Michael, to repay and to thank him for all that he gave me personally. Like, this is the least that I can do. I finally found something that I can do that I feel worthwhile and, of deserving for him. So,
and you do it so well.
And that's what Maximum Jackson was. And to answer the question that you originally asked, like, the reason that I got booted was because, you know, the founders of that website agreed that I was creating too much negativity around that particular topic, and that it wouldn't be a good look that I was continuing as their representative news reporter, because
scabs.
Because not
they
scabs,
considered you a liability to their
they did
direction.
And I'll never forget, like, the day I got the phone call from Marnie, you know, Australia's #1 Michael Jackson fan, who is a dear friend of mine and has been forever.
Shout out to Marnie. Marnie will probably come up in a conversation shortly, actually.
And she called me on the phone and she said, oh, look, like, this is a really, really awkward and hard phone call to do, but like, I wanted to be the one that told you that Maximum Jackson doesn't want you to be their news reporter anymore. We don't feel that there is any news to report, so therefore your job is not valid. And, you know, Marnie's a dear friend of mine, and I basically just said, come on, that's fucking bullshit. Level with me. Like, you're just trying to get rid of me because I'm causing headaches for the fan site in the eyes of the estate. And I mean, I knew the reason. That was the bullshit spiel that they gave me. And there are a couple of other people on that website that still dear friends of mine as well. It was a little bit insulting that they couldn't just be honest with me and that they tried to bullshit me about why they were asking me to step down as a news reporter. But then, like we said earlier, DamienShields.com started, and everything that was on DamienShields.com would have been on Maximum Jackson had they not booted me. So I guess
they're lost.
That's just the way it rolled. It's just the way the cookie crumbled. So
they're lost. So, speaking of Marnie would have also been at the MJ50 event for sure, because that's where she got the award for Australia's biggest fan.
Yep. That's the first time I met her.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that party and what that was about.
Okay, I'll do this one because this is my first memory of hanging out with a bunch of MJ fans, and it was a really exciting experience. My brother and I, we ended up scoring tickets to go to it. I think courtesy of you, Damien. It might have been. I can't remember who, but someone.
I took TJ, but Marnie might have taken you guys.
Yeah, somebody. I can't remember who it was.
I can't remember who took who, but we all took each other.
Ended up getting tickets, and this was a really exciting opportunity for me because I'd never done it. So we flew down to Sydney and did a bunch of things around the event, like, again, going to that Red Eye Records, which was really cool. I remember sitting on a train with you guys just talking MJ for ages and ages until we got to where we were going. When we went to the I remember the hotel room beforehand. We were in the hotel room talking about what we were going to wear. TJ, I think you were putting a lot of effort into what you wanted to wear that night.
Always does.
and
Latoya Jackson takes a lot of effort.
There was eyeliner and fedoras and everything going on. It was great. And so we got there to the event, and there were before the event was the most exciting part to me, actually, it was when we got to have a conversation in a VIP lounge with drinks and everything with your contact from Sony Music, who I think he's in charge of Sony Music.
He still is, yeah. I think he's the director of the commercial music section of the Australian and New Zealand music department.
It was an awesome conversation. Let me tell you. Like, I mean, this went for, I think we spoke with him for over half an hour, and we talked all about Michael Jackson's plans for upcoming music, why Invincible wasn't supported from by Sony, why Invincible had lackluster material on it compared to previous albums. It was an in-depth conversation from an important figure in Sony.
He had amazing insights about the Millennium concert, because obviously one of those shows was going to be in Sydney. He was telling us all about that, the show that never was, and
which is the awesome show that helped me and my first MJ mate Paul Black become friends. That concert that never happened. Another event that never happened. That's how me and Paul Black became friends.
I remember that was coincidentally before I get to talking about the actual MJ50 party. I remember going onto a fan forum and recalling that conversation in detail and basically being told by dozens and dozens of fans that it never happened and that I was a liar. And, and that's how I ended up getting, I think, banned from MJJF or something, or MJJC, I think it was at that point. But
it would have been Maximum Jackson.
Maybe it was, I don't know where it was, but I remember that's when I decided I'd had enough of forums, was when I reported what we'd talked about and it was treated as a lie.
Maximum Jackson.
Disappointing. But anyway, so then that conversation was great. There was a lot of hype and excitement about what Michael was planning on doing. We went to the actual event after that, which was a giant room full of MJ fans celebrating and cheering and enjoying great music that was being DJ'd, and there was a performance, I think, by Jason Jackson, which was good, but went for a very, very long time. It was.
I remember it was so long that my legs were killed. I couldn't stand up anymore. Like
it was like as long as the History Tour, and he had like the He had like original.
It was as live as the History Tour as well.
And he had original performances in it. I remember he did a Who Is It performance, which Michael, I don't think had ever performed live. And he came out on this big red chair that like spun around, and he had a mask on that he took off.
He was dressed like a jester
that's
or
cool.
something like that.
That's cool. So this was to celebrate Michael's 50th birthday. Is that correct?
Right. Yes, that's what MJ50 was. It was
it was
Sony Australia's official party for. Yeah.
And it was in conjunction with the King of Pop Best of album that fans and countries had voted on tracks.
Yep.
Yeah, I think they all gave us all a copy of it at the party.
We got copies of that. We got key rings. I've still got the official King of Pop key ring that's got some error on
Which
it.
had the wrong date on it.
The wrong
birthday.
Wrong birthday.
29th of September 1968.
So hot tip, MJ fans. Sony's been screwing things up since before the Michael album, believe it or not.
Can I jump in with a little story about that party?
Yes.
Sure.
Because that was the first time that weekend or however long it was the first time that I met Jamon. But at that cocktail party before the actual party, I recall very specifically, Jamon, you and I talking, and you having the idea for this podcast then, and this was 2008.
This is a story
you laid
I
this
very
out.
much want told. All right.
Dig into it. You told me the story the other day, TJ, and it's actually really cool.
Take the floor.
I remember specifically Jamon coming and saying, we've got to do this podcast. It's all about, like, it's podcasting. And because I was very... what's the word? I was posting on YouTube frequently at the time. That was kind of where I spent my online outlet. And Jamon saying, it's all about podcasts. It's all about podcasts. And I thought, nobody listens to podcasts.
It was around the time that the Thrillercast had come out.
Right. Yeah. And I just remember probably every time we spoke for years after, you would always bring up the idea of a podcast, and I was always like, dude, no one listens to them. How wrong I was. Because it wasn't till, what year did you guys actually launch the MJ?
This is our fourth year now.
2014. So I feel like I needed to say that so the listeners know that this has actually been in your brain for a long
So what was Jamon
time.
telling you that
exactly what we're doing now was his idea. He said that the idea would be for fan friends to get together and talk about and reminisce and share experiences and thoughts and ideas. And this was before Michael even died. It's just amazing how much the podcast that is that you have right now is exactly the podcast that you described 10 years ago.
Well, yeah, we always had in our heads exactly how we wanted it to be, and Q and I, we don't change things really unless we absolutely have to from the original vision. And in a lot of cases in the past 2 years, we've tried to get it back to what our original vision was. But the show, honestly, like it has to be said, the show never would have come to pass, really, if it wasn't for you guys and, you know, TJ and Damien. And TJ, you in particular, you were the one who really, at the end, I think you'd had enough of me saying, I want to do it. And you were like, you just need to do it.
Well, you are a perfectionist, and you would talk so much about wanting to do this, but you wouldn't want to start until you had the perfect sound equipment or the perfect intro theme song. I think it was a long time. You had basically the whole podcast planned and ready in your head, but you weren't willing to launch until you had the theme tune ready.
Yeah.
And I remember just being like, dude, just start already. You'll iron out the kinks, but you didn't want to. But hey, it happened. You got it done.
We did. Yeah. We started without the music, started very basic, and here we are, 4 years on, all still talking about it.
Yeah. So thank you. I wanted to say thank you, TJ, and Damien, for both of you for your inspiration and pushing us to get this done. And actually, really, the truth of the matter is we all started the MJCast together. We didn't start it just Q and I. The MJCast was 4 of us. We never launched as 4 of us as partners in the show, but the whole process of getting it out and getting it ready and getting it together and getting the show online, it was us. We were doing
us 4
that.
in a group message chat, planning stuff out.
Awesome Foursome.
Come on, bring the beat in. Let's go. The king of pop. Till you get enough, he said don't stop. Saying I'll be there. I'm wondering when and imagining where. Remember the times, forever in our hearts and our minds. Saying I'll be there. I'm wondering when and imagining where.
Michael, he was a friend of mine for more than 40 years. No brighter star did shine. Michael, they call you king of pop, but for your gentle soul, the pain would never stop.
That's over now. That's over now.
Talk to me, and 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. Oh, when you're blue, I wanna rock with you. Gonna be some sweet sound coming down on the night shift. I bet you're singing proud. Oh, I bet you're full of pride. Gonna be a long night. Gonna be all night on the night shift.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
You found another home. I know you're not alone on the night shift.
You're in a better place forever in His grace and all of the company. Levi, Luther, Sam, Teddy, and Ray.
Michael, hey, what you doing now? Does Marvin know you're there? Has Jackie come around? Michael, oh, I pray you really hear us.
Talk to me. Can you talk?
'Cause not a day goes by when we don't feel your love and know that you're near us. Keep it up, don't stop the way you're making me feel. Oh,
that soulful noise on the night shift.
Whoa, on the night
We all remember you. Oh, Michael, Michael, your songs are coming through.
Whoa, 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 no.
At the end of a long day,
End of a long
it's gonna be
day.
okay. On the night shift,
It's gonna be fun. On the night shift.
I bet you're singing proud.
No, you're singing right.
Oh, I bet you're gonna cry.
Whoa, 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 no.
Gonna be a long night. It's gonna be alright on the night shift.
Gonna be all over, all over, all over, all over town.
You found another home. I know you're not alone on the night shift.
Don't stop singing, don't stop. You know don't stop, don't stop. Don't stop singing, don't stop. Get enough.
CJ, we've got a question for you that we ask all special guests that come on the show. And it's a question that might be a little bit of a curveball for you, but I'd like to know what you think about how Michael Jackson should be remembered.
Oh, that's a good question. Ooh. Well, just enjoy the songs. That is it. I mean, what else should there be? As oversimple as that may seem and as disappointing that answer might be, really, I think Michael would say the same thing. So, I mean, if all you had were his songs, wouldn't that be enough? You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, and then on the next level, we have his lyrics. And then the next level of that, if you add up everything he sings about, you can tell that there's a thing that he's into, and it's love, and it's just everybody being cool to each other. And, you know, so I think on that, I don't think he can help being remembered that way. So I think he's going to be fine. As far as people who think of him negatively, I think they'll fall by the wayside in time.
Yeah.
I have, you know, famous friends and wealthy friends and things like that. When you start getting up to the point of the pyramid with your power, the people knocking you down, it just increases exponentially. So for the size of artist that Michael was, the size of crap he gets is a ratio that's directly involved, and it's the same for everybody. The bigger and more hardcore you get, just the more you're going to get, you know, that thing from that negativity. So I think Michael will survive all that easy. I think he already has. I don't think it's an issue, you know. Just people tend to like sensationalistic news. And also, I'm really pissed off at the people who work for him that they go after him. I don't like the detractors. As a matter of fact, when I was working with him, I thought his entourage, like when I was working with him in '95 with Delana, his entourage was huge. Must have been 7 people. You know, well, I felt the entourage was a bigger problem. You know, I felt some of the, you know, when you hire all kinds of people you don't know, you're going to get into some issues. So I think Michael got an unfair shake from people that he had to trust. Yeah. Michael had trust issues, obviously. I mean, what could he do? I mean, he had to play games and find out what people were all about. So I think maybe some of the lengths he had to go to find trust got him in trouble, possibly. I don't know. Maybe some of the people he hired weren't who they said they were, but, you know, he has to hire and fire quickly. So you get what you get, you know. Yeah. But I think Michael will be remembered for one thing, and that's the music.
Okay, so this is a question that we ask every special guest that we have on the MJCast. And I will start with Isabel. Isabel, how should Michael be remembered?
As a human, as an artist, as a genius. But I think we have to speak and to learn about him as human, because people, they neglected this part of him. And as soon as we don't know how he was in his own mind, in his own heart, we don't know we can't understand really what he wanted to say and to transmit through his music. But music is the basis, because without his music, he couldn't dance, he couldn't put images, and he couldn't send messages with the words. So music is really the basis, Michael's music.
Beautiful. And Bryce, how should Michael be remembered?
Oh, I think he had a 40-year career, and we can discover it over again and again. His music is out of time now, and we, as fans, must contribute to keep it alive. He was a great artist, and he must be remembered. He was a genius, and we will listen his music every time when you can.
I was going to ask you how Michael should be remembered. Would your answer be the same, or would your answer be different?
I think I would talk about probably just as someone who had an influence but used it for good rather than just for money. You know what I mean? Like, you get so many artists now that will just make music about whatever that will sell, but I think he should be remembered as someone that used his influence to improve the world, and as a bomb-ass musician.
Bomb-ass musician.
Yeah, you can quote me on that.
I think we will. So, Jonathan, a question that we ask every single special guest that we ever have on the MJCast is, how should Michael be remembered?
Michael, to remember Michael is to remember a beautiful spirit and a beautiful human being. His talent is something altogether different, but I think the talent stemmed from his original spirit of being a very, very sensitive, in tune with life, in tune with appreciation, in tune with love, on the same frequency and circuit of love. I think that's the person that used those elements, the love and the appreciation of life and the caring, to become a great artist, because you apply those things to your craft and what you do, and what does that equal? Greatness. It equals the greatness of talent, because you're that sensitive to hone your craft and develop yourself, and you're more sensitive than others to do that to the degree that he did, to become the king of pop or the king of music or king of entertainment. However you want to look at it, you have to be extremely sensitized to develop your craft, to be as prolific and dynamic as he was as a performer and as a singer. His sensitivities and his vibrato and his tone, his vocal inflections when he sings, his sensitivity to the words and the expression of the words of his music that make people cry, make people feel the emotion of his songs and relate to his songs and the lyrics of his songs. I think that all stems from the depth of love and depth of caring, depth of humanity that was in him, and like I say, most of all, depth of love. And I think that stems from Mother, who guided him in his younger years. She was Jehovah's Witness, and that faith, they professed love and caring. They went to go door to door. Michael used to do that with his mother, and I think she was a culmination of the Michael that we got to know. I mean, if not for that, we may have maybe a different Michael. Mother, she laid the foundations with the humanitarian traits that she instilled in him. Through her beliefs and the way she is, she's like Michael. She's so sensitive, so caring, so loving. You couldn't find a person more so than her. And Michael gravitated toward that and became that, because she guided him in his early life, which carried over to his older life, and his generosity and his love and going visit people just like he did when he was with his mother, going visit people at Jehovah's Witness, go door to door. He going to hospital to hospital, visiting people, spending time with these kids, buying them gifts and bringing them things, they never expected to get, making them smile when they have everything to frown about, some of them facing the end of their life, and then Mike shows up and then make them feel like they're going to live for another 20, 30, 40 years, all of that stems from the guidance of Mother. I've always seen it that way, and I've always appreciated that. And I think that's the seeds of the origin of greatness that made him become who he became. And he applied that to his music, that same kind of passion for those things. He applied to his passion for music, which is all his sensitivity of human sensitivity and magnitude and magnification of the soul and of the light, which we all are. So he was so in tune with life and life force and the depth of soul of the creative source that it demonstrated through everything he did and that he chose to do and focus on in his life. Even his artwork is magnificent as an artist. He excelled at everything. He's a prolific artist. All of that comes from depth of soul and depth of sensitivity of the spirit. And I think Mother had a lot of time. I think he was born and gifted with that before we could ever know at what stage of the birth process we could ever know that, God lays his hands on us or we become a living human being. We haven't figured that out yet. But as far as, once he hit the earth, landed on earth, and to birth, his mother had everything to do with that. Because she's just a sensitive human being as he was. He is her, she is him. And what he brought to the world is basically her and her spirit to basically shower the world with who she is, basically through him. So she guided him. I think they'll remember the things he's done is of his music, of course, and his creativity and the magnitude of his gifts and talent and prowess. But I think a lot of people will remember what he's done for people that he didn't even know. He wasn't even related to. He had no real requirement to do for anybody else, but he did it. I think that's what he should be remembered for. To me, what I call him the American ambassador of love. I think he's an ambassador of love that represents, because he's from America, so American ambassador of love, that he represents the country the way he went globally. And it didn't matter what country you were from or was in a dilemma or, in the hospital or whatever, or in the old folks' home or, whatever you were facing. He went there as if he was an American citizen or Jewish. Basically, beyond that, as if which you are, a fellow human being. He bypassed the labels that we give each other from country to country, denotation of race or color, religion, and nationality. He bypassed all of that, and he saw the human being. He went straight to the source, human being. And that human being needs something, needs help, whatever. So I think that's what he should be remembered for, just as much or more so than his music creativity. Of course, that's the vehicle that he used to be able to do these other things. That's what people don't understand. He used the vehicle of creativity in his music and his popularity of music as a vehicle to be able to reach out to the world and get his messages across about the earth and about caring and love for everybody, love each other, and to go visit these people at the hospital. He used this. If you really look at it, under the microscope, he used all that popularity and stuff like that, and gold and platinum albums and all the money he made to be able to have a chance to travel the world, and as a traveling salesman of love, so to speak, he peddled love and unity. So I think, to me, I'll remember him for both, of course. But I remember him as being a very sensitive human being that we unfortunately lost. We lost one of the best ones, one of the best human beings. Now they'll be like sheep. A lot of the world is like sheep with no shepherd, because he was a shepherd.
Hi, this is Scott Ross, lead investigator on the Michael Jackson trial, and you are listening to the MJCast. Thank you for listening.
So one event I would love to talk about, which I hope I'm remembering correctly, and we were all there together, I think for the first time all there at the same time, was the Gold Coast premiere of the This Is It film after Michael's passing. And
which we must applaud Damien for setting that up.
That was a huge event. I wonder whatever happened to those humongous wall cutout silhouettes of Michael.
Yeah, let's talk about how good a job they did, Event Cinemas. I was not expecting in any way for it to be like what it was. When we got there, all of the attendants, all of the girls on the desk that were selling the tickets, all of them had fedoras on.
Yeah.
They had posters up, hanging up of This Is It. Massive red cutouts, like you said, of the This Is It silhouette on the walls, lit up. They had Michael's...
And other silhouettes, I think, as well. Dancing silhouettes, I believe.
They had Michael's music videos playing on the big screen as we were waiting in the foyer. Fans were dressed up all over the place. I felt in that moment like it was such a heartbreaking few months leading up to that event with Michael's passing. Like, honestly, like stuff we're still recovering from mentally, really. Like, it was so intense. And then when we arrived at that cinema, it was like, for me, it was like a feeling like, wow, these, you know, these people love Michael as well. This is awesome. It was exciting.
It was like a Star Wars launch.
I wish I could look back on that event. Like, I got to ask you guys this. Do you look back on that event now with happy memories or sad memories? How do you feel about that now that we know everything we do?
At the time, we didn't know what we know now about what went on during This Is It and in the lead up to Michael's passing. But he had died 4 months prior. And to us and to fans like us, that was a world-shattering moment. So when we all got together as a family for This Is It, it was like a moment of, in a way, it was a moment of closure, I think, because we had been mourning for 4 months, but now we were finally able to all be together and to mark the occasion, I guess, which I think a lot of us felt we needed to do. But it was also a moment of celebration because that cinema was it was like a brand new built
VMAX.
It was a massive screen. It wasn't IMAX size, but it was big. And it was seeing Michael just appear after Lightman comes down and Kenny does his little talk, and then all of a sudden there's Michael. And not only had Michael died 4 months earlier, but Michael had been off the stage and out of the King of Pop zone for such a long time. For the decade almost leading up to that moment, there had been a lot of disappointment as fans. And then to see him on that screen at that time, and we were all together. I had Damien on my left, I had Q on my right, and Jamon, you were on Q's right. We were right there, all four of us right there together. I feel like crying just talking about it. That moment was very, very special. And I don't look back on that as a bad thing about This Is It at all, because we didn't know. And we shouldn't feel bad for enjoying and embracing that moment.
It was good for closure, as much as, the hindsight is that it was a propaganda piece. The reality is the footage was really Michael, it's really his songs, it's really his performances and his rehearsals. And what was going on behind the scenes doesn't change the fact that, I guess that's what we needed at the time. And I don't know if you can justify it. You can't justify what the estate and AEG and whoever else were trying to achieve with that. But, you kind of can. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but even if it was propaganda, it helped us.
I think looking back, we can separate maybe the film from the event and the experience. And at that time, we needed that event and that experience to just join us all together as friendship. And it was almost in mourning. It was a farewell and somewhat of a celebration of his life and of the friendships that had been created through him.
And we got a real taste of what was going to be. We got a taste of what was going to be, and we'd been wondering for years prior what it was going to be like. And
yeah,
it was a crazy experience because throughout the film, you would hear people cheering all throughout the cinema, clapping, applauding, yelling, like it was like a concert. And then
it was like being at the concert, yeah.
It was like being at a concert. And then as soon as the credits rolled up, it was the exact opposite. The room was tears.
Love lives forever.
It wasn't as soon as the credits rolled up. I remember Q was crying from the very first moment Michael appeared on the screen. Q, you were a wreck. So the stages of grief was really interesting from what I remember. It was like, I think I kind of went in there with a bit of a stone attitude. Like I almost had convinced myself for those 2 hours that he was not actually gone. Like it was escapism. And I was talking to TJ about this the other day from the perspective of is the film a piece of propaganda, or is it? The reality is it's not a documentary. It's a film. It's a movie. And they were trying to show Michael Jackson the King of Pop. And if they were making a documentary about Michael's final months, then yeah, we could probably say with 100% certainty it was, very, very wrong what they did. But it wasn't actually that. Like, it was a film to showcase Michael Jackson's intended concert. So from that perspective, I think it was, that's why the closure was, we were able to get closure from it, because we were just, again, able to experience Michael Jackson, like, on stage. And Q was crying from the beginning, but, like, I think, was it
you held
Jamon
it together right to the end?
I did not cry. Like, I think, with Michael talks about film and music as escapism and entertainment is escapism. Like, that was the perfect example of that. It really was. It disappeared into a whole different world for 2 hours. And for me, like, the whole time, and I told TJ this the other day in a private phone call, but Michael's moving, he's singing, he's dancing, he's constantly, like, it never stopped. 2 hours of this performance was just ongoing and ongoing. And as Jamon was about to say, as soon as the film came to the end and he'd performed Man in the Mirror, and then he's moving, and then it comes to that moment where he kind of throws a kiss out to the audience, puts his arms out, and they freeze frame him, and it stops, and he's not moving anymore. Nothing's moving. And that's the moment where you go, oh, fuck. Like, it's over. Like, the escapism is done. Like, this is just, like, the reality is 100% coming back at like 100 kilometers an hour. Like, it's...
And you were inconsolable from that moment.
Inconsolable. I think, like, I think I must have just been, like, an absolute baby for, like, half an hour at least. Yeah. It was like there were people that we weren't friends with, or like that weren't part of the fan community in the cinema at the same time. They must have thought I was an absolute lunatic.
I don't know, man. There was a lot of big time fans there, all crying, all upset. It was a.
We had the back row, didn't we?
We had the back. We were at the back. We were watching everyone in front of us. That's what I love, because we could hear them all cheering from the back.
And see them applauding and cheering. Yeah. In between every song. It was like being in a concert.
And then we could see them crying.
Yeah.
But everyone reacts differently, like, and that's important to know as well. Like, if you're a fan who hasn't, like, and I'm going to be honest now and say something that might shock you guys, but I have not cried since Michael passed away. I still haven't. And I can't. I feel like incredibly devastated and sad, and I go into periods of absolute, real, like, I wouldn't call it depression, but like real, like, I get very down when I think about sometimes how he was taken from us. But yeah, everyone responds differently. Whether you cried, whether you didn't cry, whether, there's no real right or wrong way to react to something like that. But
it was every emotion on every spectrum that was felt. Because
I'm so glad we had that.
Me too.
For me, it was a very positive experience, and something that experience sharing with all you guys on each side of me is something that I'll never forget. Because it was only months before that Damien and I were organising to share hotel rooms. What dates we had tickets for.
You were at my house the day the tickets went on sale. We were on, simultaneously on like a laptop and a computer together, trying to like make sure that we even got tickets, and everything was going crazy that day. Like, that was an exciting time.
We were on that train going full pelt, 100 million miles an hour on the tracks to glory and to Michael's redemption and comeback. And that's the ride we were on.
Were you guys all there with me as well when we were online, watching online Michael's announcement for This Is It?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whoa.
Yeah. Oh,
Remember
night.
that?
Oh,
that was
and he kept everyone
crazy.
waiting for hours and hours and hours.
There was such a jarring moment though, because he looked so good, but he seemed so off.
His behavior was off in that moment. I remember when I finished watching it, I did not have a reaction that was positive. I was talking to the people in that chat. I was like, did you guys just see what I saw? He didn't seem himself. Like, it was quick, it was rushed, it was impromptu. It was like, what was that?
And it wasn't the way that fans kind of go, is it him or isn't it him? Like, that's just a bunch of bullshit. He seemed like it wasn't himself, but it didn't seem like it wasn't him, obviously. We're not trying to say that. Just for any of the newer fans that are listening to this, we're not kind of going, we weren't sure if it was actually Michael. Anybody who says that it wasn't is an idiot.
There were people that said
Michael,
that.
But he was not himself.
And at the time, I convinced myself in the months later that it was just, he must have just been excited, or it was just Michael not reading from the script or something. But,
I thought he was drunk, and he was.
What was that? Sorry, Damien?
I said, I at the time, I thought he was drunk. It seemed like he was either drunk or on something. And it turns out that he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That moment where he steps away from the podium and starts punching the air, this is it, reminds me so much of Tom Cruise jumping on Oprah's couch.
It does.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't even saying that as a joke, but yeah, I mean, he wasn't
himself.
Really himself, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He's been building that up for a little while, though. I think when he got that award when he got the award in Japan at the MTV Awards in 2006, I think he wanted... when he sees the audience loving him, I think after what he'd just been through, especially within such close time proximity from the Japan thing in 2006, you could see he was wanting to do a little dance move or wanting to pump his fist a little bit, and he kind of like did it a little bit but then didn't. And then that moment where he was at Christian Audiger's 50th birthday party in 2008, and the same thing, the music is playing, everyone's screaming for him. Like, it's kind of those continual reconfirmations for him that he was still loved and everyone still wanted him to do it. And then I just think it all boiled over on that "this is it" announcement, even though he wasn't himself and he was completely out of it. I think this the moment where
he didn't have any inhibitions at that time. He was
people were just the
state he was in. He didn't have anything to restrain him.
Yeah, and it was beautiful. Even though if you can take the positives with all the negatives that were also there, it was beautiful to see him just let it go. Like, okay, I'm just going to celebrate this because you're all screaming for me, and this is actually a success. And even if
God,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, how far away did July seem? At the time, I think it was only 3 or 4 months away, but when he said see you in July, it was like, oh, that's an eternity.
I got a question for you guys. I mean, he physically got on that stage and told us he was going to be performing in July, but did anybody actually think it would happen? In your truest
At the time,
of true
absolutely,
hearts?
yes.
You did?
I was terrified it wouldn't. I knew. That's why I contacted you that day, and I was like, I'm really scared it's not going to happen because I don't know. I just there was something about it.
You said you were scared it wasn't going to happen, yeah, and then
I think for me it wasn't that I was afraid he was in danger. It wasn't that. It's easy to say or think that now, but I didn't think that. It was the fact that I had never, outside of the 30th anniversary concert, I was never lucky enough to be a fan during a period when Michael was going full speed and performing and touring. And I was really scared that so many other fans I knew, nearly every other fan I knew, had that experience. And I was going to miss out.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
And then we did miss out for reasons we never would have imagined, which is, probably a good segue to the whole purpose of the anniversary that we're here to talk about today, which is, the downer of the call, but I guess
that's it.
It leads us to that moment because that was a 3-month gap between that announcement and then Michael essentially being again, the only time he would see him when he was, go to the shops or go to the doctor, and then June 25.
All right, well, we've come to the part of the show now that's never, ever easy to talk about or record or think about. But again, the reason we do this and the reason we talk about this and discuss it is because there's so many listeners and fans around the world right now who are feeling exactly the same way. And there's something healing about every year we hear from listeners who say there's just something healing about hearing from other people that feel the same way and went through the same thing. So let's now talk about our experiences on June 25th, 2009. TJ, let's start with you.
Okay. I had been doing night shift work, and I had finished work at about 7 a.m. I think it was, and everybody listening around the world, remember Australia, the time zone is completely different to the US, obviously. So I don't remember, I think it was about 2 in the afternoon or something, local time when it all started happening. But I got home from work at 7 a.m. and was on the internet and started seeing the stories, you know, TMZ and everybody reporting that Michael had been taken to the hospital. And then the rumors started that he'd passed away. But I was just sort of following it. You know, no one knew exactly what was going on and how serious it was. It was just sort of going back and forth between Twitter and going to different news websites and everything. But at some point, I can't remember if it was CNN or someone confirmed it. And it was only one confirmation so far, but for some reason I felt it. I knew it. And I called Q. I'd been holding it together, and then I called Q. And I don't know, I mean, obviously you must remember this, man, but when you answered the phone, I became like frantic. Like, I actually remember when you answered the phone, I dropped to my knees. I fell like down. I lost my balance. I said, I think Michael's gone. And you calm down. You were saying, calm down. Just what? Tell me what? And I said, he's being rushed to the hospital, and they're saying he's dead. And I think you kind of just went, okay, let's get off the phone. Like, let's figure this out. And then when Jermaine Jackson came out and confirmed it, I mean, I remember all this so clearly. I was just, it was like a dream. It really was like a dream. And I lived across the street from a subway station, and I remember going over there at about 2:00 that afternoon, because they had these little newspapers that they'd hand out in the morning, and then they'd have an afternoon edition that they'd hand out so people could read them on the train on their commute home from work. And I felt the need to go over there and get the afternoon edition, because I knew that they would have reported on Michael's passing. And I was walking over there, and I'm looking around, and all these people are just going about their day. Cars are driving past, people are walking around, people are just going about their day. And I was like, the world just ended. How is it that these people are still... Honestly, I felt like something awful. I mean, something awful did happen. I just looked around and I couldn't quite fathom the fact that the world was still moving and going on. And then my memory of the last part of that was, as I said, I'd been up all night for work. I eventually got to sleep, I guess, late in the evening, and I remember waking up about 1:00 in the morning the next day. And I very clearly remember opening my eyes, taking my first breath in, and then realizing it was true. That it wasn't a dream, and just bursting into tears one breath after waking up. Like, it was real. It wasn't a nightmare. It's actually real. And he's gone. And it's been 9 years, and I still can't quite believe it. Okay, that's my side. Sorry.
It was a nightmare indeed. I definitely remember that call. And I remember, there had been silly rumours leading up to that he was on his, very ill and getting wheeled around in wheelchairs. But then we'd seen him smiling in the back of the car with his curly hair back, and how great he looked in that picture with that girl. And I was like, okay, well, they've said crazy stuff before. And when you said you were frantic, you were. And that morning I was on call, and my phone, I looked at it. I just woke up completely out of the blue earlier that morning. Completely out of the blue for no reason. And looked at my phone. Okay, no, it wasn't work calling that woke me. There's nothing on my phone. And then I looked at my phone a little bit after that, and there was a lot of messages, I think, from you. And then the phone started ringing, and it was you. And you were frantic. And I was just trying to calm you down a little bit. And this probably wasn't what was really happening. And then the internet wasn't working. I couldn't get anything to load on the internet and find out what was exactly happening. For a little while, TV stations had started reporting on it. All the news stations were picking up on it. And then the news came. And I'm glad that I had heard the news from you, or that we at least were the first people talking about things. And I remember I was home alone. Then the phone started ringing. A lot of that week, I do not remember at all. A girlfriend didn't go to work that day. She came over to look after me. I remember a few people calling, like, my dad and family, and but I know like there were a lot of calls, and I just don't remember. I remember a fan friend who lived in Perth. He came over and visited, and we just sat and watched the news together while Emily was there looking after us. I remember going to her house for dinner that night, which was really good. But there's a lot that I don't remember very clearly. I don't really have much recollection about what was happening in the forums and on the online. I think I would have had Twitter by that time, but I haven't done the Wayback Machine to see what I was saying and things like that. But it was a nightmare that had come true. And yeah, our story was, I guess, in parallel to Jamon and Damien's.
Almost identical, really. Jamon, you can start it, because obviously I was in a similar way. I was asleep and waking up to a phone call from you, but how did it all begin to the point where you woke me up and told me about it?
What time did I wake you up, so I can sort of backtrack?
Well,
I can't remember. It was early?
The way that I remember it was I had work that day, and I hadn't yet woken up, so I would have had to have woken up relatively early to go to work.
Right.
And you called my mobile and woke me up, and you were like, Damien, look, Michael Jackson's had a heart attack. He's been rushed to the hospital. And I remember going, oh, yeah, whatever, Jamon. Like, I think just only a couple of weeks earlier, or even a couple of days earlier, I can't remember the exact time, you had introduced me to the world of being rickrolled, where you send someone a fake link to some really ridiculous thing. It might have been.
I had a reputation as pranking people online. Yes. I used to love pranking people. So
I remember he sent me this on MSN chat messenger. He sent me this link, and he's like, "Oh my god, Damien, a new Michael Jackson song is leaked." And he sends me this link, and I click it, and then, of course, my whole computer goes into lockdown, and there's like, I can't remember if it was Rickroll or Meat Spin, for anyone who knows what that is. I can't remember what it was that you'd sent me, but my whole computer was just like frozen, and haha, very funny, Jamon. So I'm thinking, like, I get this call from you. It must have been 7 a.m, and you're telling me this, and I did not believe you at all. I was just like, oh god, what next, Jamon? Like, you're taking your pranks to a whole new level. And I hung up on you. I said, look, I don't have time for this. I have to get a little bit more sleep before work. And I hung up. And then I specifically recall, within seconds, my home phone, my landline phone, rang. And no one ever rings the landline. And the second it rang, I knew Michael had died. It's a weird thing to try and explain, because, and I don't know if anyone else felt this way, but when I heard it ring, I felt like part of my spirit just died, disappeared, left my body. I felt, and they hadn't even, Jamon hadn't mentioned that Michael had died, or that, that they were reporting that he died. It was pretty early in their reports. He was just saying that he was taken to hospital, and they were reporting a cardiac arrest. But that, when the phone rang out in the living room, I was like, no way. Jamon wouldn't ring the home phone unless this was serious. And I felt he's gone. And then I think it was my mum or my sister knocked on my bedroom door and said, Jamon's on the phone. And I'm like, oh God, it is Jamon. This is a nightmare. And then we talked for a bit, and you kind of said, no, it's serious. I'm not joking. I wouldn't mess around with this. we've got to get online and try and figure out what's happened. And I didn't even, in my heart of hearts, I didn't even need to go online. I just like, oh my God, he's died. This is serious. I could just feel it. I don't know why. It's a weird thing. And anyway, then we all jumped online, and I actually had a couple of missed calls, I think, from Q and from TJ. And
I remember
after I'd spoken to Jamon, I couldn't deal with it. Like, I was like, no, I can't. I actually am inconsolable. Like, but I kept it inside of me. I didn't cry. I didn't get too worked up. But I knew that the worst was eventually going to be confirmed. Like, I just felt it. And then the same thing with Jermaine giving the speech. You know, my brother, the legendary king of pop, Michael Jackson, has died. I was like, oh my, you know, he gives the time of death, and the same thing that TJ said. I fell to the ground. It was the way that my mum describes it was that I was just wailing. She said that she just thought like she'd never ever seen someone like react like that to anything ever in her life. And we've lost family members and all that stuff, and you know, you've been through grief and sad moments, and she said that this was just like something else. And she was really worried about me, and she was trying to arrange to have the day off work to stay with me, because I just couldn't get off the ground. I couldn't do anything other than just scream and cry and like, yeah. I assured her that it wasn't that serious. You don't need to put me on suicide watch or anything, but this is the worst day of my life. So like, I just need to be alone. And I did the same thing that you did, Q. I just watched the news all day, and I don't know, it was like, I don't want to talk to anyone about it, but I also want to be informed, and I want to be up to date with what's going on. And the only way you could do it was with the news, unless you wanted to go on a fan site and have, you know, millions of other people going crazy about it. And but then the craziest thing was that, like, I think within an hour of Jermaine confirming that Michael had actually died, I had news crews knocking on my fucking front door asking me for an interview with my reaction to the death of Michael Jackson. At the time, obviously, it was kind of well known in the world of Michael Jackson, you know, stretching back quite a few years, like even with the MJ50 party, that was all founded on that contest that they ran to find Australia's biggest Michael Jackson fan that Marnie had won. But the 5 finalists they had, you know, featured on television, and they'd run this big media campaign around it, and so I don't know, they just got my like details and rocked up, and I said, no, I don't want to do an interview. Like, this is like the worst day of my life. I can't stop crying. Like, and then they said to me, well, okay, do you know any other fans on the Gold Coast that we could go and interview? Because, you know, we are going to interview someone, and if it's not you, it's going to be someone else. And in that moment, I kind of thought, fuck, I don't want to do it. Like, the last thing I want to do is, you know, sit in front of a television camera and talk about this. I haven't even processed it. I don't even like know how I feel. Like, I'm crushed. But I felt, if they are going to put someone on the news to talk about the death of Michael Jackson, I was willing to do it because I kind of wanted the world to see how big of an impact it really had on some people. And I didn't feel like sending them somewhere else would have done it justice. So I fucking got dressed, put a shirt on, and did my hair because they asked me to, and sat in front of a camera, big lighting rig and TV camera at my kitchen table, and cried for about an hour. And the best that they could get out of me was, I think, one sentence where I didn't cry. And that's, you know, what eventually went on the TV, and I think it went all around the world. It went on CNN and all kind of places all around the world. And that night, I was receiving messages from people in Germany and India and wherever they were in the world saying, "Oh my God, I just saw you on the news." And, it's like the most heartbreaking thing I've ever seen, but thanks for doing it, because I felt the same way. And yeah.
One performer, countless fans across Australia.
Thanks to the fans, I love you very much.
He came here twice at 1987 and 96. What an impact. Now his death has shattered his Aussie fans.
Dude.
Damien Shields fell under Jackson's spell 10 years ago. He was booked to see 6 of his shows in London.
Unless you are a fan of Michael Jackson in the way that so many millions of people are, and the way that I am, you can't begin to understand the loss that we're feeling.
Lee Fletcher still has the ticket to Jacko's concert at the SCG at 96.
I'm just in shock. I mean, Michael Jackson has died, and there is no more King of Pop, and it will only just sort of live through his music. Yeah.
Marnie Carlson was recently crowned Jackson's #1 Australian fan. There's not a bit of Jackson memorabilia she doesn't have.
We call him Mikey.
She was also planning to go to the London concert.
It's amazing, yeah. I grew up with him, That's why he's such a huge part of my life, is because he's he's always been there.
The Tweedle sisters, Elise and Mel, are the new generation of fans.
And my mum came running into my room and screaming, "Michael Jackson's dead, Michael Jackson's dead." And I didn't believe it. I ran straight to the television and sat down, and I haven't moved since. I've been watching it all morning.
Mel was so upset she had the day off from school.
I was meant to go to school, but I physically don't think I'll be able to. I've just been shaking, and my heart's still pounding, and I can't comprehend that he's actually gone. And yeah, it's a huge loss.
He's now a chemist in Darwin, but back in 1987, when he was 11, Billy Ramirez actually lived with Jackson for a month at Neverland. Jackson invited him and his 2 sisters after seeing their homemade rendition of Bad.
And obviously he's a legend now, but he'll be more of a legend now that he's passed on.
Few Australians know Jackson better than promoter Paul Dainty, who brought the entertainer to Australia in 1996.
He was interested to know about, the sporting life in Australia, what people like, the rivalry between Sydney and Melbourne. He was very tapped into, the local issues.
But did anybody really know him? Molly Meldrum interviewed Jackson several times.
As much as I've done those interviews, I'm almost as in much the dark.
This is 18-year-old Tom Coppola. He was the winner of the Today Show competition to see Jackson in London.
I've had the best day of my life to the worst day of my life today.
Choreographer Jason Coleman says every dancer owes something to Michael Jackson.
Let's remember the silver glove. Let's remember those video clips. Let's remember that this guy, although troubled in his private life, really did inspire 2 generations of young performers.
Of all the Australian fans, perhaps Jason Jackson is the most committed.
Hi, this is my Neverland in Australia.
Neverland in Narellan, southwest Sydney.
Tigers, giraffes, rhinoceros. It's just Michael all over, and I love it so much, and I come out here and relax.
Inside, a clue to the devotion Jackson inspired. The house that's now a shrine.
Very upset. I've been crying all morning, and we'll miss him.
Mark Burrows, 9 News.
I'm very grateful that you sacrificed that time and did that, because it was so raw and it was exactly how I was, sitting at home in tears and in shock myself, just breaking down at any opportunity, completely out of the blue. I would just break down for days. So that portrayed me as I was at that time. So,
and the breaking down wasn't just days. I think it was months. Like, I specifically remember being at a shopping mall, and it was months and months later.
Oh, for sure.
And
years. I'm still tearing up now. I've had tears today in this call.
And at the mall they had, because, you know, after he died, it was like everybody wanted to celebrate and wanted to, you know, get their hands on some memorabilia. And every single music store didn't even sell merchandise. They didn't sell T-shirts in music stores. They had brought in racks and racks of Michael Jackson stuff. And it was, you know, they have like the top 40 albums, and they put each cover in the order in which they are. And for weeks and weeks and months, he was number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Like, it was everywhere. The videos were playing on the screens. And I just remember, like, one moment at the shops, just looking around, and, you know, if he had not passed away and this was going on, it would have been the greatest thing ever. Everyone, you know.
I remember stores, like, you'd go into a store and where Michael would be on the shelves, there were no CDs.
Yes.
Because they were all sold out for ages.
Yep. That's
like
so
every
true.
CD.
And, like, had that been the case when Michael was alive, it would have been the most celebratory kind of wonderful thing ever. But because he had died, and it had taken that for people to fall back in love with him, it just made me cry. Like, he's everywhere and everyone is loving it. But can you imagine the impact that might have had if people had, you know, got around him while he was still with us? What happened wouldn't have happened. Wouldn't have got to that point if we didn't. The public, not like you and I and the four of us personally, but if the general public didn't alienate him and, you know, ostracize him the way that they did while he was alive, he would still be alive. It's just, it's a crushing thought.
I remember after calling you that when after we got off the phone and I'd finished reading the news, and it still hadn't come to pass that he'd passed away at that point when I was seeing the news. I think it was still reporting cardiac arrest. I walked, I don't know how many hours it was later, but the news finally reported that he'd passed away. I then walked out of, I lived in like a granny flat at the time, and my brother and I lived in like a granny flat, and then my family lived in the main house. So I walked out of the little house we were in, and my mum met me halfway. I hadn't even told her anything. She must have seen it on the news independently. We didn't say anything. There was no words exchanged. She just hugged me for like 5 minutes. Just nothing had to be said, and it was just messed up. And then instead of sitting around looking at the news and and living in it, I thought my parents were like, well, let's go out. Let's just go and not be around the computers, and let's just go out and get some fresh air and talk about it, because usually talking helps me move through things. So I was like, yeah, cool, let's do it. We went out, made the decision to go to a shopping center, which was probably a really silly decision because at that time I wasn't ready to celebrate like the rest of the world was. Like when someone passes away, if just say, for example, tomorrow somebody passed away like that I was a very casual fan of, like Bruno Mars or something, I probably would be ready to enjoy his music and celebrate whatever. With Michael, I was not ready for that. I needed time to mourn and process it before I was ready to enjoy the music again. And literally hours after he passed away, I was walking through Sunshine Plaza and his music was coming out of every single shop. It didn't matter what shop it was, a music store or a fashion store. I remember going into a record store and I was not in the right headspace. I was actually like mentally not ready to be talking to people. And I went up to this guy who was playing the music and I was like, why are you playing this? It just happened. What do you know, can you give it some time? And I was like getting angry at him, and he must have been a casual fan, and he was like, what are you talking about? We're just celebrating him. And I just walked out angry. And then we went to a cafe, and I had the unfortunate experience of hearing a guy like 3 meters away sitting with his family, a father, actually telling Michael Jackson jokes about plastic surgery or whatever at this time, just hours after he died. And I remember just standing up and going over to him and just raging at him in front of his whole family, just like, how dare you say that? The amount this man had to give up in his life, you know. And I just remember raging at him and then leaving there as well. And I pretty much don't have any other memories of that day. It was just a blur. Like you said, TJ, just a bad dream, like a nightmare. It didn't seem real. And then slowly reality was sinking in of what happened. And it took weeks to move back to a point where I could be normal-ish again. And then it's weird to kind of say, but like, I don't know how this is going to come out, but like after Michael died, between the time Michael died and, you know, the This Is It album and movie, and then leading up until the Michael album, by and large, apart from the first month, mostly it was a really celebratory, happy time, I think. Weird to say, but it kind of got to a point about a month later for me where it was like the world was celebrating him again, and we were really exploring the art and celebrating the art like we hadn't done in many years, I think. But
yeah. It's so sad, but I'm so glad that we were able to all get together and share these stories. Because there are a lot of people that don't have what we have today.
Yeah.
Look, someone could be listening right now and feeling like 9 years removed, they finally had that moment where they could share it with someone. Like, you know, they're not part of the conversation necessarily, but we are speaking to them. So,
yeah.
Well, they can be a part of the conversation if they want to email in. If they want to share their thoughts with us that way.
Yeah, we always get some really beautiful emails after these episodes, and we don't do these to sit around reveling in sadness and morbid, sad stories. You know, we're not doing that. We're doing that. It's just to talk and just to share our experiences with each other. And today we've got you guys on joining us because all of our stories are connected. Like, we've told our stories independently before, but they're such parallel stories and they were so interconnected. And this was such a good idea that we could do this for this episode today.
I just feel even today devastated like I did on that day. There's a part of me has like been able to acknowledge what happened and realize the reasons it happened. But there's a part of me that will never, ever move on, which is the 10 years before Michael passed away, from the early 2000s onwards. He had a shocking decade, like an absolutely shocking decade. His record label turned against him. Close family friends sued him and brought criminal charges against him for crimes he never committed. He fought all of that with his head high and still managed to be a single father through all of it, an amazing father, and still by the end of it was ready to come back. And I'll never, ever be able to reconcile in myself that he wasn't able to fulfill that comeback after all of that.
I think it's absolutely incredible that he lived as long as he did, considering what he went through in that decade. If you think about that I mean, the thing
and the prior decade.
Well, the thing about it, like, to be put on trial would be one thing, but to be put on trial for that, and being that he was arguably the most famous person on the planet, who was, especially up until 93, known as being an absolute lover of children. Gave all he had for children, and for them to have turned that against him, and then to have had to have sit in that courtroom for those 5 months during that trial, and you see him on that last day, on the vindication day, and he is so broken. I just cannot believe how did he even live through it? And then to be able to, after a little while, pick the pieces up and hold his head up high and say, "No, I'm not done. I'm not done." He fucking died fighting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Incredible man.
He was a beacon and still is, and will always be, especially for fans like us and fans out there listening. I think we can always draw inspiration from how he survived everything prior. Like, I had always hoped and envisioned him as like an elder statesman, working for UNICEF or charities, mentoring artists, on TV shows and fostering artistic talent. I had always pictured him growing old and being around forever, for as long as I would be anyway. But I think his legacy, we can all reach in to where he inspired us and do something that he's inspired us to do.
And he will be around forever.
Absolutely. I'm quite certain that none of us would be who we are today without Michael. He's the thing is, and Damien, back to that news interview that you gave on June 25th, 2009, you say in that clip, because I've got it, I watched it again the other day, you say people who are not fans like us will not understand. And I'm sure that, to people that don't have that level of love and that feeling of love that we have with Michael, they would think, how could you be that upset if somebody died if you didn't ever know them? But, the thing that's so great about this podcast is it's for people like us.
Yeah.
What do you say? By the fans, for the fans.
Yeah. That's it. I just back to what we were talking about at the start of the show. We are so lucky to have each other, the four of us, and then, our MJ fan friends around us as well. Not everyone has that. There are so many fans all around the world who don't have a physical connection, with other fans in their world. It's either all online, or they may not be an online person and they don't know many other fans. So at least,
look at Elise, who's just recently joined the MJCast.
Yeah,
she said she didn't have her people until discovering you guys. It's the case in point that the goal has been achieved, because you've got a team member that came to this amazing, incredible group that only discovered it through searching for that. It's amazing when someone has a goal. You set out to achieve something for a particular purpose, and you've just absolutely achieved it with the MJCast. Unbelievable.
Also to just sort of encourage people out there, start a local MJ group, and then you can have MJ mates that you catch up with maybe just once a year for his birthday. I'm really much looking forward to catching up with my local Perth MJ friends for our charity birthday lunch this year. And it's just at a restaurant that we said, have you got a place that we could have a table, play some music on our table, and we're all going to have lunch or dinner together. And we do that every year. We've done that for a few years now, and I'm really looking forward to doing it again this year. And, you know, I've got little group chats where we just message each other when there's some Michael news, or they listen to the episodes and they give big feedback on the episodes.
So how many group chats have you got going on now, Q?
It's impossible to count. Impossible to count.
But Q loves notifications, so
no,
make sure if you're in one of those group chats, don't ever put all of your thoughts in one message. Make sure you, as they come to you, hit send, and if another one comes straight away after, type it out individually.
Yep. And if you see me leave that group to stop getting those notifications.
And don't forget to tag the MJCast in anything that you ever think that you might want to post on Twitter. They
Lucky
love
we
that.
can edit this out, thank God. So it's not a live show. But, you know, I do encourage people to start a little local MJ group. You can do it easily online. Facebook, you know, name it after your town where you are, and just sort of people will search for it. So go out and search, and if you can't find one for your town, start one. And then you can do this. It's easy.
It's amazing that more of them don't exist. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking as you're talking about it, and, you know, create a Michael Jackson fan group, and I think, oh yeah, that sounds pretty batshit crazy. But then the more I was thinking about it, the more I'm thinking about it as you're explaining it, I'm thinking, well, you know, I love football, and I'll go with 50,000 other people who love football to sit in a stadium and watch a game together. Like, you know,
that's fucking crazy.
People who love like vintage cars, they'll all get together every couple of weeks and, you know, go on a rally or drive together, or motorbikes or whatever it is that people love. Or, you know, people have a knitting group or book club or whatever it is. But why don't we have Michael Jackson Club, or more commonly have Michael Jackson Club? It's he's the most popular entertainer that ever existed. It's quite astonishing that it's not more common, really. So it's a great idea.
I think there are those groups. There's a lot of them online though. So
online, yeah, but it's a different thing when you get together with someone face to face.
Yeah,
it's different when you're breaking bread and, you know, having lunch together and listening to music or play a game. Like last year at the birthday thing, you know, we played a game where you play like 1 second of a song and then you have to guess. And then, you know, we all have like doubles of magazines or doubles of books or something. And we just use those as prizes.
Yeah.
It was so easy to do. Like, go on YouTube. There's YouTube games that you can do at these little things to celebrate his birthday and, you know, make it something for a good cause.
And I find people in real life are usually a little bit nicer than they are online as well. I don't know if you guys have found that.
It's amazing
true.
It's amazing what can happen when you take away the computer screen and the keyboard. It's amazing.
Yeah. So TJ, like, I think you and I sort of did something locally after Michael passed. Like, you went to, it was some sort of vigil or something in Sydney.
Yeah, I even remember the date. It was the 4th of July. So really only a couple of weeks after Michael passed away. I don't remember how it was organised, but there was at Sydney's Hyde Park, just a bunch of fans just gathered and people spoke. It was almost like a wake, really. We got together and we, you know, shared stories and we were together. But it was one of those moments where we got to be together. I remember Jason Jackson, who performed at that MJ50 party we were talking about before. I didn't know he was going to be there. I remember seeing him approaching this gathering of people from a distance with, I mean, he looked like he was Michael Jackson. There were like 3 or 4 different news cameras following, like chasing him, basically. He didn't perform or anything there. He was there to be with everybody and share stories.
I think
it was supposed to
helped organise that event, if I remember, online. I think he was one of the organisers.
Right. And then it was supposed to be, I'm pretty sure it was like an early afternoon type event or mid-afternoon. And it was supposed to sort of end around, let's say, for argument's sake, 5 p.m. or something. But everybody stayed together for hours and hours and hours. The sun went down, and the gathering transitioned from Hyde Park. Those in Sydney will know where I'm talking about, but from Hyde Park to Martin Place, where it was then dark. Somebody had brought some massive stereo speakers on, like these, you know, those trolley things you move a fridge on?
Yeah.
Somebody brought 2 massive speakers on those, which I don't know, they must have had a battery powered or a generator or something, but basically throughout Martin Place, blasting Michael. And everybody, there must have been at this point 50 to 70 people stood holding hands in a giant circle, dancing, singing, and then some people would get into the middle of the circle and dance. It was the most beautiful thing, and what was most beautiful about it was that moment, after dark, and when everybody was at Martin Place and listening to music and holding hands and sharing, was completely unplanned and spontaneous, and it really honestly felt like Michael was there with us.
Over in Perth, I don't remember the date, but there was a park down the road from where I was living, and it was near a venue that Michael had actually performed at with his brothers back in the J5 days, actually. It was a venue that was a swimming pool. They'd used it in the Commonwealth Games, but they must have also used it for various concerts, I guess, for the seating capacity or something like that. So there was a big park next to that, and I guess just like local Facebook groups, there was people that had organised this sort of vigil in the evening, and it was huge. There was so many people there, and, you know, we had T-shirts on. It was a fairly chilly evening, so jackets, scarves. We couldn't really have candles, but people had the battery-operated candles and a lot of torches. And I remember just walking down with a backpack with, you know, some torches and stuff in, and bumping into some, at that time I didn't know a lot of local fan friends, but Jesse and Jermaine, who I'd met at the MJ50 Bucharest cinema screening that was held by Sony.
Yeah.
I'd met them then, and they were there at this thing as well. And it was really good. It was like, you know, we all sang and we were cheering, like doing Michael yells out, and it was so good to be around that many people. And now, like, you know, our little Perth Facebook group is pretty small. Our turnouts for the charity dinners, the charity lunches, they do grow every year, but like, where are all these people that were, you know, there was probably over 100, I would say. And where are they now? Like, that makes me sad. And I think, well, we were all together then. Where are they all now? They've all just drifted away.
They took the boxes off the stage. My heart was crushed in disarray. The world was frozen and engaged to find the king had slipped away. I walk through the streets, I feel so alone, with questions and pain, but the only thing I know, I will always be missing you, and your love will last forever in my heart. I will always be missing you, 'cause you changed my life for the better. I will always be missing you. You held my hand a little while. We sang a song of lovers' vows. You looked at me with a graceful smile, and then you gave your final You've inspired a dream to make the world a better place. I'll do my best today to carry on. Yeah, yeah. I will always be missing you, and your love will last forever in my heart. I will always be missing you, 'cause you changed my life for the better. I will always be missing you. I will always be missing you, Michael. And your love will last forever in my heart. I will always be missing you. Yeah, 'cause you changed my life for the better. I will always be missing you.
How should Michael be remembered?
I think Michael should be remembered with a smile on his face. That's it.
And what a smile it was.
Yeah.
That's how I see him. I always see him with a smile on his face, you know?
Hector, we have a question that we ask as many guests as we can. How should Michael be remembered?
So I think Michael could be remembered like a very influential man, you know. He influenced the music, the dance, the videos, a lot of stuff in the entertaining. So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Hector.
Now, another question we always ask our guests when they come on the show is, how do you think Michael should be remembered? And I guess we get an insight into that through your books, but if you could boil down into, I guess, a soundbite, I mean, how should Michael be remembered?
I think first and foremost, he should be remembered as one of the greatest artists of the past century. He was a singular artist. Like, there's, you know, like I said, there's so many people that try to, in some ways, model what they do after him. You know, we could work through like a list of dozens of people that cite him as their inspiration, but there will never ever be another Michael Jackson. I mean, he's so unique. He had this really unusual education in terms of, you know, going through Motown, just the people that he was able to study and draw from, and then just his natural ability, and then his curiosity, you know, just consuming everything, having this extensive library, this extensive kind of warehouse to draw from. The number one thing for me, you know, like you said, maybe not surprisingly given the book that I wrote, but is I just think he should be recognized as just one of the most unique and brilliant artists we've ever had.
Ola, we have one final question for you that we ask every single guest that we ever have on the MJCast, and it's how do you think Michael Jackson should be remembered?
As the baddest entertainer of all time, a person that was full of love. All he eliminated. If you were to have met Michael, he had an aura around him. I mean, it was amazing just to have been in his company. So I would say, yeah, he was the baddest entertainer of all time. And he was love, the definition of love. Yeah.
This is Mike Smallcombe. author of Making Michael, Inside the Career of Michael Jackson, and you're listening to the MJCast.
TJ, first time on the MJCast. We've been so lucky and happy to have you on the show. You've come super prepared, unlike Q and I, with a find of the week.
Absolutely. I don't know if the fans know about this or not. I'd never heard of it until I saw it last night. This video called "If Michael Jackson Made Thriller Today," or it's also called "Michael Trapson: The Grave," and it's like a fan-made modern interpretation of the Thriller short film. I found it very, very fun and interesting, and the dude looks in some way nothing like Michael, and in other ways exactly like Michael. Yeah. It's quite an interesting video, so I'd love if I could submit that as my find of the week.
We'll put that in the show notes for sure.
Fun.
And Damien, I think you've come with one as well.
Well, yeah, I wasn't sure whether we would be doing this or not, but
we are now.
I know you've talked about John Cameron's musicology and the Michael Jackson content that he's been putting out, which is amazing. But I also found out about this audio documentary, which is it's an hour long, and it's on YouTube, and it's basically I think it's called Trevor Nelson Thriller Michael Jackson's Masterpiece. It's about the making of the Thriller album, and I'm fairly sure it was done while Michael was still alive in 2008, and it's just an hour-long kind of audio experience that takes you through the making of the songs on the Thriller album and the era, and it's just sourced from archival interviews with Quincy and Bruce and Rod and Michael and all of the music playing throughout, and it's just really cool. And I thought, if people hadn't heard it before, it would be worth checking out. I really, really enjoyed listening to it. So I would, highly suggest. So it's a Thriller theme for the finds of the week.
Awesome.
Love that.
What a find.
That will be really good.
It's a UK documentary. So the guy's, I think he's from BBC Radio 2 or something like that. I'm not 100% sure.
Is this the one where they interview Rod Temperton? Is that a different one I'm thinking of?
It's got a lot of Rod Temperton stuff in there. I'm not sure how much of it is new interviews or how much of it is
sourced,
just archival stuff. There's a lot of interviews that everyone will be very familiar with, but it's just the way that it's pieced together in a way that tells a story of the album, as opposed to, I really like when people bring material together and piece it in a way that actually allows you to learn the full story of something. Because if we don't do that, this is just me speaking as a writer, I guess. If we don't do that, if we don't pull all of the pieces of the puzzle together and put them in their correct place and allow someone to see the full picture, we're going to have to rely on fans to be spending their entire life on YouTube searching random videos and trying to figure out the history of stuff. We have an opportunity to create documentaries and literature. Why shouldn't we? And this Thriller thing is just really, really cool, really well done, and a great listen.
Well, while you're on the topic, Damien, are you online that you want to share any profiles that people can contact you on?
Pretty much just on Twitter at the moment, at Damien Shields. So I've taken a big step back from social media, and just for a few different reasons, but enjoying my privacy, but I do still engage with Michael Jackson fans on Twitter. It's pretty much the only reason I use Twitter, is to talk about Michael and to find Michael news and to share what you guys are doing, because that's always valuable content. So it's just limited use, but I can be contacted, so don't be shy. I also have my website, damienshields.com, but I can't even remember the last time I posted something on there.
That's more for an archive thing now.
I've forgotten how to log in and actually post an article. It's been that long, I just don't even remember how to get on there. So
Jamon will help you with that. He's good with that. TJ, are you back online these days anywhere?
Just Twitter. I like Twitter. It's simple. It's easy. It's good enough for me. So I'm just at Tabloid Junk.
Excellent. And Jamon, our profiles?
Yes. All right. We are all over the interwebs. We are at themjcast.com. That's where you can access. It's like a portal to everything else we have, like shows, articles, Casio case, court docs, all kinds of stuff. We are on social media at the MJCast over on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. But the way that we would like you to engage with us the most is through a podcast application. So if you're on an Apple device, you can access us on Apple Podcasts or Overcast. If you are on an Android device, you can get us on lots of different podcasting apps, including Podcast Republic, which our very own Elise Capron uses and vouches for. If you want any help getting on a podcast app, just hit us up on Twitter with some questions and we can probably help you there. Otherwise, you can email us if you've got any feedback at all on the show. You can email us at themjcast@icloud.com. We love talking with our listeners about all kinds of things. So please contact us there and give us your thoughts. And maybe if you've got a spare second during the day, think about rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. It takes just a few seconds, but helps us out big time with getting our name out there and visibility in the Apple Podcasts store.
And thank you for anyone that also reviewed us on any other apps such as Facebook. We have some amazing Facebook reviews on our page as well. People have let me know that they are on their Android devices listening to us on the Podcast Addict app. So if you have an Android device, that's another one that you can look at that we are. And if you've got a different one on an Android device, then let us know and we can mention that if you enjoy, and it's an easy thing to use because to get our shows delivered to your device, it's just a click of one button. That's it. It's that easy.
All of these memories keep washing over me every time I hear your songs, and all of these melodies keep coming back to me, even though I know you're gone. There may never be brighter star in our galaxy to come along. Hey, hey, hey. 5 years old and brave when you stepped on that stage, you owned it like a man, but your future didn't tell. Fame would be your prison cell where few could understand. Keeper of the dream, it never seemed that your feet ever touched the ground. Out of sight, out of mind, won't happen this time, 'cause timeless always stays around. Name the selfless king. Was it worth everything to give your innocence? Could it be the crown that finally weighed you down in the end? So many cried when you left too soon, but now you're free to walk upon the moon. Keeper of the dream, it never seemed that your feet ever touched the ground. Out of sight, out of mind, won't happen this time, 'cause timeless always stays around. All of these memories keep washing over me, even though I know you're gone. There will never be a brighter star in my galaxy to come